Welcome to the Bronx Latino History Project. My name is Stephen Payne, librarian and archivist at the Bronx County Historical Society. Today is April 24th, 2022, and I'm really happy to be here on this bright day with DJ Doc, Ivan Rodriguez, and we're here in right around 82nd, 83rd Street and Riverside Park, and really honored to be here with DJ Doc because he's one of the most prolific and accomplished DJs, engineers, and producers in hip-hop history. He has his name credited with many of the top songs, singles, and albums throughout the history of hip-hop, and he is behind the sound and really the special flair of many more songs and albums that he's not credited for, and yeah, really looking forward to hearing his stories today. So DJ Doc, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about your family's history and background and how you ended up in New York.
My mother and father were born in Puerto Rico. Then my sister and I were also born in Puerto Rico, so we actually come from Puerto Rico. We weren't born in New York City. My sister was born first. I was born maybe a few years later, 3-4 years later. And my father decided to come to New York City for more opportunities. So we came to New York City, I want to say 64-ish.
Okay, 64.
And we came to the Upper West Side. My mother came to the Upper West Side. Not too long thereafter, my mother and father separated.
Sure.
So my sister and I were with my mother, my aunts. So I was raised mostly by women.
Okay.
So I'm very protective of women because I was raised by women, my aunts and my mother and my sister. And my father migrated to 48th Street, which was Hell's Kitchen in the early 70s, late 60s.
Okay, sure.
So I was raised in this area that we're in now.
Okay, I see.
Nice area, quiet. Even from early, I was very curious about music, the instruments, the things I would hear.
Yeah.
Of course, there was a lot of old classic salsa and ballads, Spanish ballads in my house, and my mother would always sing.
Sure.
And then I started to spend weekends in Hell's Kitchen, which was a lot more exciting.
Okay, yeah.
It's a lot of crime, but it just was more exciting than it was here. Here was more quiet, laid back, and little by little, I would kind of indicate to my mom that I wanted to spend more time down there.
Sure.
She was concerned, obviously, over safety.
Yeah.
As a few years went by, my sister picked up and went. She went with my dad.
Oh, wow.
I stood with my mom.
How much older was your sister?
Carmen. Her name is Carmen, pardon me. My daughter's name is Crystal. Carmen was, I think she's 3, maybe 4 years old at the time.
I see. Yeah,
so she went to my dad's, and I stood here. And maybe another few years later, then I started to spend a little bit more time. Sometimes I would go to school from there.
Oh, okay.
Take the bus and go to school from there. And eventually, I just liked it so much that I would switch it around. I'd spend most of the time there and come see my mom on weekends.
Oh, I see.
So that's where I really got an essence of music, because there was a lot more going on. There was music coming out of all the windows.
I'm sure.
You get a lot of congas and a lot of keyboards and people doing stuff out of their apartments. It was really exciting to me.
Wow.
And I'd get less of it up here.
Sure.
So I started to spend more time down there. And I guess that's where I started to get my love of music together.
Yeah. Do you remember the first song that kind of just completely consumed you?
Kind of tough to say because there were so many of them. And initially, when my sister would want to go to a house party, and that was what was popular. It wasn't lounges, it wasn't clubs, it was a house party. Somebody did a house party in their apartment, and you would go and you'd basically dance and congregate with other folks, and it was really nice. So I would have to go because my dad would tell my sister, if you want to go, you got to take him with you. So I was kind of forced to listen to a lot of 70s stuff. At the time, I wasn't too crazy about it, but as time went by, it had a big effect on me.
Sure.
So then I was listening to stuff like the Stylistics, Temptations, Shy-Lights, Joe Bataan, Eddie Palmieri, Hector Lavoe. So it was a mixture of all of that. And as time went by, then I started to appreciate. So that was basically the groundwork for me to start to listen to music. And at the time, I loved the drums.
Okay,
I wanted
yeah.
to be a drummer, but we were too poor for me to take lessons.
Sure.
But that always stayed in me, which affected me when I got my hands on a drum machine.
Okay, yeah.
Because I had the ideas and I was able to do it with my hand. I just could not study it because we couldn't afford it at the time.
Yeah. Did you ever play conga or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
No, I played drums, and most of the time I would take the quantization off so that I was playing live.
Oh, okay. I see.
Which I did on a lot of KRS-One stuff, things that had a certain rhythm that you could not syncopate.
Sure.
So that's where I kind of became like a live drummer on a programming drum machine.
Wow.
But a lot of that came from listening to that music, and that music I still love today.
Absolutely. And the rhythm is like nothing else
right.
that you find
James
there,
Brown,
so.
of course.
Yeah.
Back then there was an album that he released that had the letters "Sex Machine" across the front in red letters.
I know that.
And I think it was also said live in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah.
Well, that is considered the greatest up rock record. Up rock is a style of dancing that was popular in the 70s going on, before breakdance. Before all that stuff, there was up rock, which was a one-on-one thing, a lot of hand motion, some splits here and there, but there was no spinning around on the floor.
Yeah, okay.
And up rock, the big songs were James Brown, Give It Up or Turn It Loose, Jimmy Castor, It's Just Begun, Kool and the Gang, Love the Life You Live. And there was a gospel group, Stovall Sisters. They did a song called Hang On In There.
Okay.
But the rhythm of it made it an up rock record.
Yeah.
And Earth, Wind and Fire had a song called Moment of Truth.
Okay.
Very funky. As long as the song was funky, it became an instant classic.
I see. Yeah.
So that was a lot of the stuff that gave me the idea for rhythm. And then the stylistics and things like that gave me a lot of love for harmonies.
Sure.
And chords and things that made the music sound lush.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are the groups that did that for me. But all of that came through hanging out with my sister, going to these house parties, and a lot of outdoor parties, which they don't do anymore. There were a lot of block parties. You don't see that much anymore.
You close the block down.
The whole entire block would get closed. There'd be a little basketball court. They'd give out free sandwiches, but there would be somebody playing live music or a DJ.
Wow.
Or a record shop that was nearby would come out and play. And you would hear all the classic songs there.
Wow.
That was a big inspiration for me.
Yeah, and there was a lot of that going on in Hell's Kitchen, I imagine.
Yeah, constantly. It was the same as probably El Barrio.
Sure.
In El Barrio, you constantly, so you still go there and you still hear it coming from here and there.
Yeah. It's some parts of the Bronx you can still see that
Exactly. You
too.
still get that feel of, wow, you can feel something's going on there. That's how it was in Hell's Kitchen all the time.
Okay, wow,
all the time.
Wow. So going back to your mom and dad for a little bit, do you know much about either of their sides of the family? Where they might, because I think from what I remember, you were born in San Juan, is that right?
Right.
Okay, so do you know where they might have, did they live in San Juan like for multiple generations, or did they live
Well, I know
elsewhere?
my dad was born in Calle.
Okay, sure.
And I believe my mom was born in Santurce.
Oh, okay, I see.
I mean, because, again, since I was so little when we left, I didn't know much about their background.
Yeah.
Trying to remember, my aunts talked to me a little bit about it, because we all came. My aunts came, my uncle came, not with us, but we all came and eventually got together. And most of us spend the rest of our lives here. My dad, my mom, my two aunts passed away. They grew up, and I still have an uncle that came here as well.
Wow. All lived in...
All came from Puerto Rico.
Okay, and did they all live kind of in the same area of New York?
Kind of in the same area, maybe a town away, but that was kind of the area they were from. But I know my father I knew because they always called him Calle.
Oh,
his Spanish buddies that would drink beers and stuff with him, they would say Calle.
Yeah.
And that's because that's where he was from.
Okay,
He was born and raised there.
Yeah. And
here, he never left Hell's Kitchen. And now he's in an assisted facility, but he's still sharp.
Yeah.
He still remembers, and he's now and then he'll say something like, "You remember I came up in Calle?" I'm like, "Yeah, papi, I know."
Yeah.
He'll bring out these things. But my dad was Calle, mom I believe was Santurce, and as far as their I never met my grandfather. If I did, I don't remember.
Sure.
And I never met my grandmother.
I see.
That part I don't know about.
Yeah. And when your aunts and uncles came to New York, did they live in Hell's Kitchen or close to 82nd, 83rd Street?
Well, when we came, my aunts came to my mother's house, which was 82nd.
Okay, yeah.
And then shortly thereafter, my aunt, one of my two aunts, her name was Titi Lola. She went to 98th Street in Lexington. And she stood
Okay.
there. That's where she
Wow,
went
okay.
from until she died.
Sure.
She lived on 98 in Lexington, and then my aunt gravitated to Hell's Kitchen as well.
Okay,
So my
see.
aunt
Sure.
and my father were both in Hell's Kitchen,
Sure.
and my mother was up here.
But none in Brooklyn or the
No,
Bronx?
they never
or...
left. They never left Manhattan.
Sure. Yeah,
As time went by, I figured how lucky we were to be able to live in the city in the
Yeah.
core, because it was difficult to find a place and it was expensive.
Absolutely.
My father really lucked out because he got a job at the Spanish daily news, El Diario.
Oh, sure.
And that was also very difficult.
Wow.
He didn't have an education here in the States.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
saying
yeah.
in like New York. He came from Puerto Rico, very little English.
Yeah.
And he landed that job, and that was a great
That's
job.
amazing.
It was a great. He did the I think typesetting and some other
Okay.
things.
Wow.
And that was what he did. And my mom was basically taking care of us when we were there. And my aunt became a seamstress.
Oh, okay. Sure.
And then my other aunt married and basically was a housewife with a couple of kids, and her husband took care of everything from there on.
Okay, I see.
But we were very disciplined. Like whenever I visited either of my aunts, I couldn't speak English.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Even by accident, because if you said the same word twice,
Yeah.
you get struck. She'd smack me like really hard. And then she'd say, "I'm really sorry, but I said, "Oh, I get it.
Yeah,
I understand
for sure.
totally."
For sure, absolutely.
And that's how it was. And trouble was not allowed. Hell's Kitchen, my aunt told me, you know very well, there's certain rules and you got to follow them.
Yeah,
On the occasion that I broke them, I paid for it.
absolutely.
But it kept me out of trouble. I never got arrested, never got in jail. I never had a problem. And my fear was letting them down.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
And
said, if I make a mistake and I let them down, not only is it hurt, but I'm going to pay for it.
yeah, you're gonna pay for it. Yeah,
now,
worse than.
now you can't do that, but it was very helpful to me.
Yeah.
Very beneficial.
And were there other women or just other adult figures in the neighborhood who kind of would also keep an eye out on?
Oh, no,
you?
the entire block.
Yep.
No, that's how we were in Hell's Kitchen.
For sure.
It's non-existent today, but if I cross the street, I'd get grabbed by a neighbor by the ear and
Wow.
brought right back to my aunt and say, your nephew, he was crossing the street, and I paid for it. Because they said, I'm giving you some leeway, you can't break the rules.
Sure. Absolutely.
So no, everyone on the block was like either your uncle, your cousin. You could not do things,
Absolutely.
break windows, anything, because immediately they pick up a phone. Listen, your nephew,
Yep.
your son, whatever. That's how it was.
Word would get back faster.
That's
than
right. And
anything.
if I did something here with my mom, and I was punished for it, she would call my aunt. So there was a part two. So she would say, "Send him over. I want to talk to him." That was the only time I wouldn't want to go.
Oh my god.
But I had to go. You
That's
couldn't
funny.
escape it.
Yeah.
Because she would say, if you don't show up, it's worse the
It's
next
worse
time.
then, yeah.
So then I would have to do that. And
Wow.
but it was a good upbringing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a good upbringing. Women were actually the strongest people I knew.
Absolutely.
Much stronger than men.
Absolutely.
Much
yeah,
stronger. It was women. It was
Yeah.
my aunts and my mom and my sister.
Wow.
And my aunt's also from Puerto Rico and old school Puerto
Sure,
Rico.
sure.
Everything's cooked fresh.
Yeah.
Nothing frozen.
Yeah.
You had to be polite. Open the door. You just didn't cross certain lines.
Absolutely.
You did not.
Absolutely. And since you mentioned food right now, what are some of the favorite things you remember any of your family members cooking while you were growing up?
Well, when you were sick, they did a thing called arroz con leche, which was a rice that sat in a bed of like milk.
Sure.
And it made you feel better.
Sure.
So that was one. Of course, in the holidays, it was everything. It was chicken, fish,
Yeah.
pork, which I don't eat.
Sure.
That was another battle when I decided I don't want to eat anymore. My whole family went
Oh,
crazy.
wow. Yeah.
Because they're
yeah.
like, you have to. I said, no, I choose not to.
Yeah.
But that was big because they eat pork every holiday.
Sure. Pasteles, I mean,
oh, yeah.
unless you make it with beef.
Unless you make a big beef or
yeah.
chicken. And that was tough. After a few years, they let it go, but they were on me.
Yeah.
They thought something was wrong.
Yeah. I'm
Like,
sure.
what's going on? And you joined some kind of cult? I said, no, it's very salty. It's just not good for your body. So
Yeah.
I stopped it long time ago. And they would do that. They would do fresh pies, cakes,
Sure.
tembleque, which is coconut pudding.
Oh,
of
wow.
course, flan,
Yeah.
bread pudding, rice and beans, rice with gandules, which is the
Sure.
yellow rice with gandules.
Sure.
And all of it was always fresh. And they wouldn't get their product from Hell's Kitchen. They would go to El Barrio.
Oh, okay.
Or the
yeah.
Bronx.
Okay, yeah.
Because that's where the two places where you had fresh
You could get
chicken and
all of
everything you could get it right there. And in Hell's Kitchen, we had a few bakeries, but we didn't have like a slaughterhouse or
Sure.
things like that, so they would go uptown to get it.
Sure.
But yeah, it was the basic, obviously arroz con pollo, rice and chicken.
Sure.
But the pasteles, when it came to that,
The real
yeah,
deal,
that was really, really good. And Yeah, none of that stuff exists no more.
I know.
But that was one of the things they would do, yeah. The holidays were a lot of fun, a lot of music. That was a nice thing, too. The music went on and on, like to midnight, 1 o'clock. Got to a point where I got too tired, and they would just send me to bed, and they keep
and
going.
They were still going, yeah.
Yeah, and it was always peaceful, very peaceful, and very loving.
Yeah, wow.
Very loving, very, very supportive. My aunts were extremely supportive. No matter what, they never turned their back on you.
Yeah.
They would say, listen, this is a mistake. This is the reason it's a mistake, and you don't want to do this again. Wow. And I learned from that.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot. And I try to share that with the kids I know and the people that grew up around me.
Absolutely. So as far as the neighborhood, either Hell's Kitchen or 82nd Street, the neighborhoods were concerned, what kinds of people lived in the neighborhoods at the time?
Well, up here, there was a good amount of Latinos, which was at the time, when I was a kid, it was Puerto Ricans and Dominicans.
Okay, sure.
Then the rest of the neighborhood was predominantly white with a little bit of African American.
Yeah.
Hell's Kitchen was Irish, African American, and Puerto Rican.
Very mixed, I guess. Huh?
Very, and like heavy. There was no such thing as racism. That was non-existent.
Sure.
Non-existent. Color had nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
These were my family or my friends, and it's still like that today, the ones that are still here.
Sure.
That, as I grew and I saw all this racism stuff, it was actually mind-boggling to me, because I was like, what is this about? Because I grew up, my best friend is African American.
Yeah.
I have a friend that's Cuban. I have a friend that's Irish, and they're all just my friends.
Yeah.
So that was tough for me to understand for many years. But Hell's Kitchen, I learned later when I got older and I started reading books that the Westies, which I knew who they were. I was a kid at the time.
Sure.
And they would always come by and pat us on the head, hey guys, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I read years later they were cutting people's heads off.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, I know this guy.
Yeah.
And I know this guy.
Yeah.
I said, growing up, these guys were like, look over.
They looked out for the neighborhood.
They looked out for the neighborhood. They look over everyone. And then I remember there was some tracks in the back in 12th Avenue 11th, and that's where they would find bodies.
Wow.
But as a kid, I didn't know any of it.
Sure.
I didn't know anything. I just knew, these guys are from the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then I saw movies, and I'm like, wait a minute. I know these guys.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, these guys were the ones that, were involved with mob stuff and all that. But we knew them. They were very nice to all of us. They protected us. That was another thing about the neighborhood. You could not go in that neighborhood and do something to one of us. Man, you could pay with your life.
Yeah.
That's how serious it was. I've always learned to respect absolutely everyone, regardless of age, color, creed, because you don't know who you're dealing with, and I learned that in Hell's Kitchen.
Sure, absolutely.
Sadly, I've seen people get murdered in front of me, right there in front of me.
Yeah.
And I've been blessed, and nothing ever happened to me or my family. But it's scary stuff because it's reality.
Yeah.
So as years went by, and music and hip hop mostly, where they talk about drive-bys and all this, I said, wow, where I grew up, there was no such thing. They came right up to you.
Sure, absolutely.
If you were really young, your fathers would come out and settle it. Wow. My father and your father.
Yeah.
When we got older, we settled it right there in the street, and when it was over, we shook hands and it was over.
Yeah.
Things now are much different.
Yeah.
You get murdered from far away,
anonymous.
things like that. But no, but when we grew up, it was, violence was very, very serious. And you tried your best to stay away from it.
Absolutely.
And you learned from what you saw.
Absolutely.
And I saw a lot, and I learned a lot of it.
So we'll get into some of the school experience in a little bit, but just so I have a reference as far as timeline, what years were you in high school?
Ooh. Early 80s, I believe.
Early 80s?
Yeah, I believe it was early 80s. It's been so long.
Yeah.
And it was short. Reason being that I went to Martin Luther King High School when it opened.
Oh, okay.
There were two light-skinned people, me and a young Caucasian kid.
Okay.
He ate lunch in the principal's office.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That's how serious it was. So it's a predominantly black school.
Sure.
I didn't see it as a problem because I grew up in a neighborhood with blacks and everything.
Absolutely.
But I started having problems in the school.
Okay.
I started getting pushed into corners, and people started to try to threaten me, and I kept saying, that's not a good idea. Like, where I come from, this is not a good idea.
Yeah.
So it got to a point where I spoke to a few of my friends in the neighborhood that were older, and they came to the school.
Okay, and they settled it.
And they settled everything. They said, you don't want to get near this guy.
Yeah.
Once that happened, I think a few letters got back to my mom.
Sure.
And we started talking about it, and she goes, I don't want this problem, I don't want that problem. So I told her, let's make a deal. I said, let me leave the school and I'll get my GED in 6 months.
Okay, sure.
She let me leave. I got my GED in 6 months.
Okay, wow.
I moved on and I went to college.
Wow.
I said, this situation's a little different. It's gonna blow up at one point or other. I don't want that.
Absolutely.
And I go, like, give you my word, it'll be done in 6 months.
Absolutely.
And I did it in 6 months.
Wow.
And then I went to New York Tech. I went to play basketball there and to study.
Okay, sure.
And I only lasted about a year because my music career took off.
Yeah.
So I had a choice. I was playing basketball on the team and I was studying computer technology. And I said, wow, like, I went from a DJ that would DJ weddings and birthdays to, can you go on the road with me?
Yeah.
So I took that choice and I never looked back.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the only reason I didn't finish. I enjoyed it, but
sure. And the I think from what I remember, the first time you went on the road was with Spyder. Is that right?
That's right.
Wow.
Yes,
wow.
It's really intense. And he called me at home. My mother said there's a guy on the phone, and he said, "Can you go on the road with me?" Which to me was shocking because I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
I did a lot of DJing, but I never left New York.
Sure.
And we were going to like North Carolina, then South Carolina, and then you go to small clubs or big stadiums, and before you know it, I'm on the road.
That's crazy.
And that was the end of weddings and things of that nature. But that's the reason I left college. Otherwise, and in between all that, I still took 2 trade schools and completed them. Wow. One was Center for Media Arts as an engineer.
Sure.
And the other one was PSI, which was Programming Systems Institute, all about computers, which I finished as well.
Wow.
That's where I learned a lot about computer technology from the bottom, from binary numbers and how they created computers using metal donuts and winding them forward and backward so they could turn on and off.
Wow.
So it's well before Windows.
Yeah. Wow.
I did that as well.
That's amazing. So yeah, but before we get more into school and eventually, a lot more into music, one of the things that we were talking about just a second before we started was gangs in the neighborhood, and I guess there were probably more if you'd grown up maybe 5-6 years before that, at least at the timeline in Hell's Kitchens like it was in the Bronx. But I imagine even when you were a teenager, there were still some gangs around. Is that right? There
were gangs, maybe because of the relationship that people from Hell's Kitchen had with the city.
Yeah.
We didn't have gang shootouts. There was no such thing.
Sure.
There was no accidentally struck by a bullet.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. I remember seeing the Black Spades often. They would come in with their motorcycles, jackets, but they were kind to everyone, shake hands. If there was an event, they would bring things to the event.
Okay, yeah.
And then there was always that the number 1 and 2 guy in Hell's Kitchen, usually drug dealers.
Sure.
Very powerful.
Sure.
And they would come and pay respect to that person.
Yeah.
And never a problem, but I was aware of them.
Yeah.
Now that this ties into something really interesting that I've never discussed. We were still kids. I wasn't into the whole gang concept, but the fact that you could put together a group of people to do something was better than you by yourself.
Absolutely.
So I came up with, there were like 4 or 5 guys, and I came up with something I called RCNY, which is in my early records. If you look at my credits, it says mixed or whatever by DJ Doc RCNY. So RCNY stood for Rap Committee of New York. But it wasn't hip hop rap. It was rap like we're doing here. Hey, let me rap to you.
Yeah.
So initially, a few folks said, "Is this a gang?" I said, "No. No, we're about communities.
Yeah.
We're trying to get to know people. So we rap with people, get to know them, basketball, bait, whatever it has to do with anything. We want to do it.
Yeah.
So RCNY was born in Hell's Kitchen, and I still have a jacket that says RCNY Midtown on the back.
Oh, that's amazing.
When I do events in Hell's Kitchen, I still use the moniker RCNY, and I have a lot of supporters because we grew up there.
Sure.
But it was one of the first, I guess, institutions that was peaceful and successful that went from there, and then I ended up touring and making records. But it started with a handful of guys, like 5 of us, and it had to do with music, sports, meeting girls, of course, because we would go do events. The girls would come up and we get to meet them. But
rapping has a lot to do with meeting girls.
But it was well before hip hop or anything.
Sure.
The word rap meant let me rap to you, let me talk to you. So that's what RCNY stood for. But that was my version of those gangs.
Absolutely.
And we would try to find an empty basement, paint it, make it our own little place, play music there. Some people wrote poetry. It was whatever it had to do, but it was no violence.
Yeah, sure.
There was no crime, none of that.
Yeah.
That's where RCNY was born initially. Gosh.
Do you remember around what time that was, or how old you were?
Late 70s.
Late 70s.
After 77.
Something like that. Yeah.
probably somewhere mid to late 70s.
Okay. That's amazing.
And I kept it. And the only reason I dropped it on records because it started to take up a lot of room in the credits.
Sure.
And then I adjusted it because there's a friend of mine that's like my brother. His name is Andrew Flores.
Okay.
His DJ name is A Flow.
Okay,
Andrew Flores. So he would come to my events. He was from the Bronx. I was from Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah.
But we got together really, really well. I met him through his best friend would play basketball. I was huge on basketball.
Okay,
my two loves were basketball and music.
Sure.
So I met his friend. We played really, really hard against each other, and we had respect for each other. So then he came down and realized I play music, and then he brought him down because he wanted to be a DJ. He goes, I'm going to show you what a DJ really does. So he brought him down. So during a few events, Andrew would tell me, your events always rock. They always rock.
Yeah.
He said they never suck. They're never dead. There's always people. And he goes, and you have this energy when you spin. And he goes, so whenever you do an event, that event must rock.
Yeah.
And that's where this came from.
Okay.
Must Rock Productions.
Got it. Yeah.
Which I got patented and everything. I registered it. Came from Andrew Flores.
Okay.
It was his invention.
Wow.
And for a while, it would say RCNY Must Rock Productions. My publishing name is Must Rock Productions.
Must Rock Productions.
So
sure.
I let the RCNY go, even though I still support it.
Sure.
It was just so many others. But the word Must Rock Productions came from him, and it makes total sense because whether it was a record, I'm working on production, or whatever I'm doing, it has to be done a certain way. Sure. That's just my way of working, my dedication. And he told me when you do stuff, it always rocks. It has to rock.
Wow, that's where the word Must Rock.
And he came up with it, Andrew Flores.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And he uses Must Rock Mobile because he's still a DJ.
Oh, okay.
He's in Florida right now, but wherever he goes, his logo is Must Rock Mobile.
Okay, sure.
He handles the mobile division, which I used to do, but I got so busy I couldn't do this and that. I can't spin and then also produce and then also engineer. It's just too much.
Sure, absolutely.
So I've started to come out recently. I did the Puerto Rican Day Parade before the COVID pandemic. And I did 2 summers in a row. I did summer jams in Hell's Kitchen.
Sure.
And I like to do that in Hell's Kitchen because it brings everyone back together.
Absolutely.
So that's a lot of fun too.
Absolutely.
And I try my best to do that when I can.
Absolutely. So let's take it back to like elementary school for a little bit before we keep moving forward. Which elementary school?
I went to school right up here. I went to Public School 9, which is still there.
Okay, sure.
It's on West 83rd Street and Columbus Avenue. I even have some pictures, I think, somewhere at home where I have the little button-down shirt and hair cut to the side. And my mother and my father would take turns bringing me there. I went there. Initially, that's where I went to school before I moved on to William J. O'Shea, which was known as IS 44.
Oh, okay.
Which is only like 6 blocks away.
Sure.
And it was during that time that I left to Hell's Kitchen, and from Hell's Kitchen I went to King.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, Public School 9, PS 9. Now it's one of these new schools where it breaks the school into different portions, and there's this one school here, but it's still there.
Okay,
PS 9. I went to PS 9 on West 83rd Street. I remember it very well.
And what was it like there? Do you
remember? It was nice. Clean cut, a lot of singing.
Sure. Okay.
I learned something there. This is off subject, but it still sticks with me today because when you walk through the streets, sometimes you run into some people that are not so courteous.
Yeah.
So you're walking on the right side.
Yeah.
Now, I remember in public school, you would hold hands with a little girl, and they would tell you always walk on the right side. I believe the entire country is that way.
Yeah.
So when persons are coming towards me, I'm like, the left side is completely open. And then I said, maybe they didn't go to school here. But in New York City, and like any other state, I'm pretty sure in the country, they teach you to walk on the right side.
Yeah.
And I would always remember, they always told us to walk on the right side. Why do people have trouble walking on the right side?
I know. I think that same thing.
It's mind-boggling. I'm like, I know you went to kindergarten.
Yeah.
And it's always, they still do it today. You get the little kid, you hold hands, get on the right side.
Yeah.
Don't block the left.
Absolutely.
So that always takes me back to PS9.
That's funny.
I still remember my teacher. I can visualize her. Very sweet lady. And one traumatic moment I had during that time was I had to get my tonsils removed.
Ooh.
Because I would catch a lot of colds. I had a lot of allergies. And I remember getting them removed. And I remember my dad bringing me to school. He carried me that time. And I was like real sore and stuff. That always stood with me as well. Wow. The time they removed my tonsils. And my dad brought me to school when I recovered. That I remember too.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Those are good times, except, traumatic, but
Yeah.
having him carry me and all that was very reassuring.
Sure, sure, absolutely.
I remember that.
And yeah, did you have any like negative experiences in either elementary or intermediate school?
Elementary, no. Elementary was fine. Intermediate, there was always that challenge.
Yeah.
And by nature, I'm a very low-profile person.
Sure.
I don't do a lot of interviews. I don't do a lot of... If it seems like it's going to be something good and it helps out, I'll do it. But I'm not big on hype.
Yeah.
That's a whole other subject that I learned over life, and I learned in Hell's Kitchen.
For sure.
Real is real. A lot of fake stuff out there, but
Absolutely.
I deal with reality. I don't deal with hype, and I'm not the. I was always comfortable being the guy in the back.
Sure.
When I was on stage, whatever I do, I'm okay in the back. I don't need the cameras. I don't need the lights.
Because you know what you do, and
That's
it doesn't matter if
That's
anyone
all that
else
matters.
does. Yeah.
If you enjoy it, great. If you don't, I enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
So when I went to junior high, there were a lot of challenges. There's the bully, and then there's the real popular guy, and I was like, why do I have issues when I'm the quietest guy in here?
Sure.
I don't, like when I look now at those books where they say most likely to this or that, there's no way that Ivan Rodriguez from that book became DJ Doc. No way on earth, because that's not me.
Yeah.
It kind of happened.
Sure.
I noticed that a lot of guys, they have a background. They have a Tila Rock, or a Grandmaster Caz, or a Curtis Blow, like Run DMC.
Sure.
Run was Curtis Blow's DJ before he became Run. So you had these. I didn't have any influence.
I know you came literally from.
It came.
Yeah.
The whole Doc thing had nothing to do with music. It had to do with Dr. J. Because I loved Julius Erving so much so that I named myself Doc because I loved him that much, and I still admire him immensely.
Sure.
But it had nothing to do with music. I didn't place it in the middle of my name.
Yeah.
The music industry did.
Sure.
I believe one time one of my credits ended up, instead of Ivan Rodriguez, it said Ivan Doc Rodriguez.
Okay, yeah.
And that stuck.
Sure.
Everyone that knows me calls me Doc.
Sure.
There was never the letters DJ in front of my name. Ever.
Sure.
Because to me, they were just too much.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah.
There's people that have the name Grandmaster and this master, and not for me.
Doc.
To each his own.
Yeah, sure.
It's beautiful. To each his own. But for me, Doc was plenty. My name Doc is here on my arm.
Okay, yeah.
It was the only tattoo I have had in my life, and it was
Okay.
Doc, and then there's a Pink Panther. Because growing up, I thought he was really slick.
Yeah,
he was always cool and never got in trouble.
Absolutely.
'Cause I like this guy.
I mean, the music too is.
Yes, I don't need the trouble. I like this guy, so that's the reason I had this. But I never had a tattoo after that. But it was always Doc, and if you run into anyone that knows me, you'll see them call out Doc. That's how you know they're my friends, close friends.
Sure,
if you hear them call me DJ Doc, they're more of a supporter that don't know me personally.
Yeah.
Or once in a while they'll say Ivan Doc Rodriguez. They know me from music.
Sure.
But all my close family and friends call me Doc. So that you would have never expected in intermediate school.
Yeah.
It was Ivan Rodriguez. I was the guy sitting in the corner in the back, and if you didn't see me, I was okay with that.
Yeah.
So in intermediate school, getting back to that, there were some challenges. I was able to get past them. A lot of that had to do with Hell's Kitchen, being raised there. You knew when you needed to step up and when you could just ignore it.
Sure.
So there was a few challenges. Soon as I started getting to sports and music, I could feel those challenges kind of back up.
Yeah.
And I didn't do anything to make them back away. They just kind of backed away,
Sure.
which I was thankful for.
And is that when you started playing basketball?
I started playing basketball, I want to say 16.
Okay.
And I only started playing because I was dating a girl that was really good at basketball.
Okay.
And I sucked.
Yeah.
I would dribble with two hands.
Sure.
And I would go support her and watch her play. I'm like, that is so cool. And she goes, why don't you try to learn?
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? And this is how I am still till today. It's a gift. I'm thankful for it. But when I put my mind to something, if I like it, I'm going to learn it.
Yeah.
You and I can talk about something. I do this. I'm like, I think I like that.
Yeah.
And I'll learn that.
Yeah.
So she told me you really should. And I literally, two hands. 1 year later, I was playing in the PAL. And that season, I got most improved player.
Wow. Okay.
It's like, wow, this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I've never been taller than 6 feet. I'm 6 feet, but I remember the first time I dunked.
Sure.
And it was all about excitement and that surge of energy. And I remember I played for Hell's Kitchen. We were the Clinton Cougars. I think that year we went 29-1. We were really, really doing well. One of our guys was all city. He played for King. And I remember getting a fast break.
Yeah.
And one of the guys threw a bounce pass, and I just caught it at the right spot, and I took off.
Sure.
When I took off, I just wanted to lay it up, but I noticed I was still up there. And I can hear one of my guys go, what was it he said? He said, dunk it, something like that. So I turned my hand opposite, and I actually dunked the ball in. And I said, oh my God, like I can dunk.
Yeah.
And it was all that energy of, I'm going to get better at this.
Sure.
I ended up playing in college. I got drafted to Puerto Rico.
Wow.
And I took basketball very, very seriously.
Absolutely.
Like I did music, and it was because of the love of it.
Sure.
And it all came from that girl telling me, why don't you try?
Wow.
So that's always been that way. Whatever it is. A job, a project.
Yeah.
If I like the project, you win. You're good because I'm going to take care of it.
Yeah.
If I don't like the project, I'll tell you.
Sure.
You know, I've never taken money for something and say I'm not doing this. I don't want. I say, listen, I'm not too crazy about it.
Yeah.
I don't see it, but if you still want me to do it, I'll give it 100%.
Sure.
That's another thing. Whenever I did Robert Sanchez, it was the same as Redman or Method Man or Boogie, and I do the same for everyone.
Yeah.
No one's bigger or better or deserves more. I do the same for everyone. But I'll always tell you the truth.
Yeah.
That's hard to take sometimes, the truth. But I will tell you the truth respectfully, but I'll tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And I think that came from those little engagements in intermediate school, in King, sadly watching people die.
Sure.
Knowing this could be different, but it's not.
Yeah.
And I took all of that, and I made the best I could of it, and I'm still here.
Yeah.
I'm a cancer survivor.
Wow.
I've been through a lot, and I'm still here, and I do the best I can. But it all came. I could say I wouldn't change a thing. Hell's Kitchen is in me. It is who I am. I grew up there, and you learn respect easily, or you learned it the hard way.
Sure.
Man or woman.
You're gonna learn it.
That's right. You're gonna learn it. When I hear people say, "I'm gonna learn you," trust me, I know what that means.
Yeah.
Because I learned it in the streets and from my family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah, I learned.
Absolutely.
I could say that more than likely, what I went through, by today's standards, would have probably been abuse.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah.
Because if they didn't keep me on that line, there's a handful of us left. A lot of my friends died of drug overdoses.
Sure.
They died of AIDS because of sharing needles. I mean, kids. I would see kids sticking needles in their arms.
Yeah.
And these are my friends.
Yeah.
So if my aunts did not do, mostly my aunts, put me there and say, this you don't do,
Sure.
I might have had a different outcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't have any complaints about, my life. No, it was rough, but it was worth it.
Made you who you are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a scene, I always tell folks that don't really know Hell's Kitchen. If you look at the original Exorcist, the movie,
Sure.
there's a scene where the priest goes to visit his mother. He walks into a block.
Yeah.
It looks like it was hit by bombs.
Yeah.
I was there.
Okay.
There's kids
sure.
jumping on a car. Each one got $50 for doing an extra work on jumping on the car. Most of those kids are dead now.
Wow.
I was, again, being shy. I didn't want to do so. I was across the street. So I'm watching them jump on the car. But the thing is, when you look at that, you say, people couldn't have lived here.
Yeah.
I was living in the building in front of where those kids are jumping up and down.
Wow.
That was 420 West 48th Street.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's just like when you see some pictures of parts of the Bronx from back in the day,
Right.
too. I mean,
burnt out.
Yeah.
Mattresses on the ground, and we would jump
Harlem
on those
too.
mattresses.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's a perfect example of, I wonder how it was like where Doc grew up. Watch The Exorcist.
Okay.
Watch when he walks down. After he leaves the train station, he talks to somebody, and then he walks.
Okay,
That's
sure,
48th Street between 9th and 10th Avenue.
Sure, wow.
And it was, when I look at it, we didn't have heat.
Okay,
So my father would sacrifice his stuff for me and my sister, and he would freeze.
Wow. Would you all, I've heard in other instances of people who lived in buildings like that, everyone would go into the kitchen, they turn on the oven.
Sure.
And that's how you'd survive in the winter.
When we moved there, there was no bathroom. The
Wow.
bathroom was outside.
Okay.
Our shower was next to the sink.
Wow.
So
sure,
my
sure.
sister would be cooking, and I'd be taking a shower in the kitchen.
Yeah.
This is the reality.
Absolutely.
When you needed to use the bathroom, you looked out to see if the lock was off. If the lock was off, somebody's using it.
Okay.
Somebody from next door.
Sure.
And then you would go in and close this little door and use the bathroom, and then they had the thing on the top with the thing you pull.
Yeah.
There was no bathroom in the apartment.
Okay.
Nope.
Wow.
Nope.
Wow.
When there was no heat, there was nobody to call.
Sure.
There's no city number, no 311. No, you froze.
Yeah.
Or you did
absolutely.
the stove thing.
Absolutely.
That's how it was.
Wow.
That's how it was. The winters were brutal. I remember them well, and yet I wouldn't change them.
Yeah. What about your mom's place? Was
My
that
mom's place was
apartment
better. Luckily, up here, Upper West Side always got better treatment.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There was very few times when there was a problem with heat or water or anything up here.
Sure.
There was always problems down. Whenever winter came, we knew.
Yeah.
Or instead of the oven, they would boil water. Huge.
Oh, okay.
The the pans they would use for the holiday rice, which was
okay.
huge.
Yeah.
They'd make rice, and that you'd fill that with water.
Sure.
And if you weren't feeling well, you'd put a teaspoon of Vicks inside the water, vapor rub, and turn it on, and the kitchen will warm up, and you would be able to breathe better.
Okay, wow.
Old school remedies.
Wow.
We did what we could. There was no assistance.
Sure.
There just wasn't. I still remember our initial block parties. They would bring a trash dumpster, sort of clean.
Yeah.
Fill it with pump water, and we would swim in there.
Yeah. Sure.
We would swim in there.
Sure.
We didn't care.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then they had a program called Manpower. Manpower would have job opportunities throughout the city, but they would also come to neighborhoods with these little lunch packets with cheese, ham, a little piece of bread, and a Jell-O.
Okay.
And give those out, and that was the best.
Wow.
Because that's all we could have.
Sure.
So
absolutely.
all of that took me to the whole thing about hype. Decades later, it doesn't work. If you're not down to earth, we'll never gel.
Yeah.
I can tell a hype person, and again, to each his own. I'm not judging, but I'm not about hype.
For sure.
It does nothing for me. If you ever see me perform, whether it's with a microphone, with a DJ set or in a studio, I don't touch microphones.
Sure.
Because I have nothing to say.
Sure.
Everything I do with my hands.
Yeah.
I don't need the hype. I don't need the microphone. I don't need all those special effects. None of that. None of that exists in my set.
Yeah.
Because all of that is distractions.
Absolutely.
Having to do with hype.
Absolutely.
If I can distract you, then what I do with two turntables is not important.
Yeah.
I don't have to have a skill. All I need to do is distract you and then put another record on.
Yeah.
It's popular.
Play some sound effects.
There you go.
Bada bing,
Or
bada bing,
you let a record play, you put a digital delay on it, and then you let it delay out so there's no tempo. Then you put the next record.
Yeah.
Due respect, to me that's cheesy.
Yeah.
It's not. There's no skill in that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I don't even know why they invented sync buttons on equipment. Why would you hit sync? The fun in doing it is doing it yourself.
Yeah.
If you're gonna hit sync buttons, a little kid could do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is no skill in that, but it is what it is.
Absolutely. So since you're bringing all this up now, let's get back to your earliest experience with DJ equipment, because there's when we talked before all of this, I know you have some really interesting stories about all of that. The inventions that you you literally invented things.
No choice. We were broke. We were eating little ham sandwiches.
Yeah.
We would, there's something I do, and this is all in straight honesty. When I go eat in some restaurants, if I order white rice and the rice is a bit bland, I put ketchup in it.
Yeah.
That came from being broke.
Sure. Absolutely.
I can afford it now.
Yeah.
But some habits die hard.
Yeah.
So I've had friends that go, ketchup? I'm like, you never struggled, did you? I said, did you ever eat bread with ketchup in it? There was no hot dog.
Yeah.
Just ketchup.
Ketchup, yeah.
I said, that's real. That's what they call real.
Yeah.
When you don't have enough and you break it in half and you give half to your sister or to your friend.
Yeah.
So I will still put ketchup at time because it takes me back. And I'm like, wow, this tastes good. Because that's all I had.
For sure.
So when it came to the DJ thing, one of those events where my sister had to go out, and, I feel kind of bad now because I used to pick on her, and
Sure.
you pick on your sister.
Yeah.
And my father says, he don't go, you don't go.
Yeah.
So she took me. So she took me to a place with her, and it was called the Ice Palace.
Okay.
Gorgeous. Yeah. I've never forgotten it. It was based inside an ice skating rink on 32nd or 33rd, and I want to say 11th or 10th Avenue, and it was a really weird building that's still there that goes up like a V.
Okay,
like an upside down V, and at the top was a ice skating rink.
Wow.
They would temporarily build a dance floor in the middle of the rink and then two little sets of stairs. It was so cool.
Yeah.
They had water beds on the balcony so that you could listen to music and just bounce around in the water bed and look at the stars. It was so cool. And I was a young kid. So I got in with a fake ID, and I was excited but nervous because I was like, they're going to catch me. I'm like, I don't even have a mustache.
Yeah.
And I remember clearly when we went in, everybody's looking at things, and I get caught on this bass, this heavy bass. I'm like, ooh, kind of made my skin crawl. And I kept walking in, and I saw a window on a wall, and in the window you could see a guy with headphones on.
Sure.
And I'm like, he's probably the guy playing the music. My first time in a club.
Yeah.
And he was playing MFSB, Love Is the Message.
Okay.
And I don't know, it just came over me, and I told my sister, I want to do what that guy's doing.
Yeah.
And she goes, what are you talking about? She's there, she's having a good time. I said, I want to do what that guy's doing.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, I want to do it. Like I said to you, if I like it. And the very next morning, I had to talk with my dad. I said, Papi, this thing, he uses two turntables, and and we didn't have money like that.
Yeah.
So when I wanted to do it, there were no mixers.
Sure.
You could not go to Best Buy or Guitar Center or Sam Ash or the mom and pop store and buy something with 2 volume controls. Didn't exist.
Yeah.
So when people say be thankful for the pioneers before you, including hip hop guys, rock and roll guys.
Absolutely, yeah.
Elvis owed a lot to people before him.
Sure.
Respect them. You may not agree with them, you may not even like them, but respect that they did it and it permitted you to do it.
Absolutely.
So when I did it, the battle was A, I don't know what I'm doing. B, I can't afford it. C, if I could afford it, that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So I said, well, how can you go from one record to another and you don't have a source? 2 receivers.
Sure.
2 independent receivers, which means you need 4 speakers. So there were 2 speakers on one, 2 speakers on the other. That I got past that challenge. Now, the turntables, no pitch control.
Wow.
No, you can't buy a turntable with pitch control. They didn't exist. So I said, there's only one way to do it. Drop the needle at a point where both rhythms are similar and at the right time.
Wow.
Years later, I understand that was called needle dropping.
Yeah.
I was doing that as a 14, 15-year-old kid. I didn't know what it was called. I just know it was the only way I can get the needles to work. And if I couldn't cue, I would bring my ear close to it and listen for the little sizzle. And I knew that was the high-end snare. It wasn't the 1, it was the 2.
Sure.
So if something went, I knew that was the snare, and that's where I would time it.
Wow.
It was excruciating hard.
I'm sure.
And once it was in the right place, I'd grab one volume on the receiver, start to bring it up, bring down the other one. And I said, wow, it worked.
Yeah.
It was so cool. It worked. And that's how I started. No mixer, 2 sets of receivers, 2 sets of speakers. And then it came to a point where I wanted something a little better, but I couldn't afford it.
Sure.
So I made my own speaker. My friend Andrew Flores still talks about it today.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I was a kid. I didn't know anything about impedance, resistance,
Sure.
voltage, current. I knew nothing.
You're what, 12,
14,
13?
15.
Oh, 14? Okay, wow.
And I said, well, I always like to mess with tools, so I got 5 pieces of wood that I found in a lumber yard. There used to be a lot of lumber yards in Hell's Kitchen, and they would throw a bunch of wood away.
Sure.
So we go get the wood. On the way to get the wood, we would run over to the breading place and steal bread. You could smell the bread for blocks.
Sure.
And as soon as they went back in to do something, we'd all grab a loaf and run.
Yeah.
That's what we did. And I took the wood, cut it into 5 pieces. The box came out pretty darn good, and then the top was the catch.
Okay, yeah.
This is where the speakers are gonna go. So I got together a bunch of car speakers that were thrown away or were very, very cheap at like Canal Street or something. And I think I put like 8 speakers in there. I had no clue that resistance, impedance was important. I just wired them.
Sure.
And that was late December, and I remember one of my friends was a landlord, was a super in a building next to ours, that she said, "Listen, this apartment is empty. The tenant left, and it's gonna be empty for about a week.
Okay.
Want to do a party?" I said, "Can we do a New Year's party?" She said, "Yeah." So we went in there. I hung the speaker up. I put hooks in it. I hung it up. We couldn't afford lights, so I put an umbrella upside down. I put Christmas lights in it.
Sure.
Those are my disco lights. And we started at like 12:10. After we said Happy New Year with the family, we went in there and I played music till the next day till 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Wow.
Yep. And that was it. That was like, for me, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And that yet was still with very primitive equipment.
Sure.
Way before Newmark and Gemini made it accessible.
Absolutely.
But that was a big deal because that also taught me to do things that I did in studios.
Sure.
And in other issues with music that I would have never thought of.
Absolutely.
I would have never thought of because everything came too simple.
Yeah.
You buy stuff now and you hit a few buttons, but what happens if those buttons aren't there?
Absolutely.
Or if one of them goes bad?
But you had to learn to do all the work.
You had to learn to do it, and then when it worked, you knew, I'm good at this. I can do this.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of that in studios as well. I came up with ways to make things sound a certain way
Sure.
when it seemed like you couldn't do it.
Wow. So what are some of the kinds of records that you were spinning at this time, if you remember?
All 45s.
Sure.
No albums.
Sure.
If you ever listen to, I did an album with an artist by the name of Lord Shafiyq. The album
yeah.
is called The Chosen Ones.
Sure.
There's a song on it called Robo Doc.
Okay.
The lyrics are true. He talks about how I would walk into a record store with a really big coat on
Yeah.
and walk out with 45s in my pocket.
Sure.
Again, broke.
Absolutely. No
And
other way to get it.
not proud of it, but it is
Yeah,
what happened at the
absolutely.
time. And I told them, if you're going to say it, say the truth.
Yeah.
So I would go into a record store, and if I could, I'd take a few 45s, and that was my source,
Sure.
45s. There were no 12 inches.
Sure,
There was
sure,
only
sure.
albums and 45s. Albums were too expensive.
Yeah.
So you would take a 45 and basically go back and forth with two 45s.
Yeah.
So back then, wow, Atco had a group called Sons of Robin Stone. They had a big record called Got to Get You Back. That was one of the singles.
Sure.
A lot of Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5.
Yeah.
Hum Along and Dance was a huge club
yeah,
song at
sure,
the
sure.
time. A lot of underground groups, Executive Suite, Main Ingredient towards the beginning. A lot of R&B soul, some up rock like Just Begun,
Sure.
but all 45s. A lot of disco music. And that's another huge thing that people know me for hip hop, and I had nothing to do with hip hop. I didn't care about hip hop.
Sure.
My music was R&B soul, classic soul, and
Yeah.
disco.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I came up on, and that's something I still enjoy when I want to listen to music.
Absolutely.
But when I did hip hop and I got a taste for what it did, I said, I like this.
yeah.
So I
yeah.
put my mind to it, and I became very, very good at it.
Do you remember what year you I mean, obviously it wasn't even called hip hop for a long time, but what year you kind of first knew of this kind of
I would say late 70s, I think 79, maybe 80, when Grandmaster Caz and groups like that would be on independent labels, and I would hear them,
Sure.
and they were okay. They were nice. Some of them would make me move my head because of the
Yeah.
rhythm. I'm very rhythmic.
Yeah.
If they didn't make my head move, I said, it really doesn't matter to me
Sure.
who they are. If it doesn't make me move, I don't like it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I remember those kind of songs. I remember when Fatback Band did a song, and they were like the first commercial record with rhyming on it.
Okay.
It's called King Tim III.
Sure.
There's a rhyme in the song.
Okay.
That was the first physical record I believe ever came out with rhyming.
Rhyming on it. I see.
Even though they weren't rappers.
Sure.
But they
sure.
rhymed on it. And of course, in the 20s and 30s and all, there was their own version of rapping.
Yeah.
But those were the ones I heard. I didn't play them too much, and I never wanted any live artists, hip-hop artists, to touch my microphone.
Yeah. Sure.
Because
sure.
they would destroy my set.
Yeah.
They would be too loud, and I'm big on quality, so I would say that's the only reason, not because you're good or not good, it's because you're out of control.
Yeah.
You know, and that was another thing I learned to teach a lot of the artists I work with when we were in the studio. Keep a certain level of control. You don't have to scream unless it's required.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
those all things came from, from the having to invent things coming up. But all 45s. I still have a really, really great collection of 45s in my studio, and eventually albums, which was tough to buy 2 albums.
Sure.
That was
sure.
tough because it was expensive.
Absolutely.
And then imports came in, which made it even worse. Imports were like twice the price of an album. So, but it was 45s, a lot of disco, some R&B soul. I would play rock and roll. That was
Okay.
part of my set.
Sure,
I
sure.
would play Bill Haley.
Okay,
I
yeah.
would play the Twist. I would play a little bit of Twist-related Elvis, like
Sure.
Blue Suede Shoes or something. And they always loved it because it took certain people back.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I enjoyed Frank Sinatra a lot. I still do.
Sure.
Etta James. I love all types of music.
Absolutely.
But if you told me hip hop, I would say
Yeah.
which is odd
Yeah.
because I really enjoyed it, and when I do it, I do it very, very well.
Absolutely.
But if they told me, if you had to take music with you, it'd be classic soul.
Yeah.
If I had to go and it was
That's
only
what you
one
came
choice,
up on.
it would be classic soul.
Yeah, for sure.
It would be classic soul all the way.
For sure.
I still take my daughter to the Beacon Theater for Valentine's Day to see the Stylistics, the
Wow.
phonics. So my daughter knows all the songs.
That's wonderful.
And I tell her, you can love what you love. I said, but listen to these people.
Yeah.
Look at what they do. Listen to the chords, the violins.
Yeah,
Whenever
yeah,
they bring strings, I said, oh, this is going to be great. She goes,
Yeah.
why? I said, they have strings.
Yeah.
There's live strings. I said, that's huge.
That is huge.
That's what made Motown huge, when they added strings.
For sure.
Before strings, it was, when they added strings, like, whoa.
The sound just...
It threw it up.
Yeah.
Strings
Yeah,
are big.
yeah.
So, yeah, anything with beautiful strings, lush. Oh, I love stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
for
that's what
sure.
I tried to do with hip hop. I tried to make it lush.
Absolutely.
I used a lot of panning. I used doubling. I did things that didn't exist.
Sure.
Not
sure,
in
sure.
hip hop. They existed
Sure.
in rock and soul and folk music, but they didn't exist in hip hop.
Sure, absolutely.
Hip hop was kind of monotone.
Sure.
The audio never made you go, oh, what was that?
Yeah.
And I kind of invented that, and I said, I'm going to make this exciting.
Yeah.
So I like to make hip hop songs exciting, not only the artist, but the experience, especially when you put headphones on.
Oh, absolutely.
Any records I do, listen in headphones, and you go, wow, I didn't hear that in the car or here or there.
Sure.
And I remember when I met DJ Scratch, which to me is my favorite hip hop DJ of all time.
Yeah.
I told him, you're pretty amazing. I told him, I'm gonna make you more amazing. I said, I'm gonna do things to what you do that no one's ever done before, because you deserve it.
Sure.
And he and I have a great relationship, and it's always from the beginning, from when he very, very first started, and we did his cuts, and I said, okay, now let me work on them. Yeah. And when he would hear the mix, it's like, wow. I said, well, that's what you do, but now it stands out. It doesn't have to be in the back.
Sure.
And it doesn't overpower, but it has enough where you go, wow, like the cut moved from there to there, here, there, and then I really enjoyed doing that for Scratch.
Absolutely.
I really did.
Absolutely.
I would do it for Cutmaster Cool V as well. For Biz, I would do that for Cool V. Sure. Because I worked with them as well. But being a DJ, I guess, I lean towards making sure that people notice them.
Absolutely.
Because over time they got lost.
Sure.
DJs got lost.
Sure.
They just, people didn't really understand how important they were.
Yeah. I mean, and I guess like you said, when as the technology evolved and things became simpler, you didn't necessarily have to have someone with a whole lot of skill as a DJ sometimes.
Nope. It's totally different world. Expensive records are not a problem because you rip them off from the internet.
Yeah.
Creating mixes doesn't matter because you hit a sync button.
Yeah. So going back to records for a little bit, what are some of the stores that you would get the 45s from on a regular basis, if you remember?
Colony Records was one.
Okay.
That was on 49th Street and Broadway. As you walked west, Sam Goody was there.
Oh, okay.
Many people don't remember. Eric Sermon mentions Sam Goody in some of his rhymes. Sam Goody was there.
Yeah.
I went into Sam Goody. Of course, I went to Rock and Soul, which is still around.
Sure.
A good friend of mine owned a record store in Park Place. His name was Frank Ramos. And then he moved uptown to the Midtown area. I went to his store. I went to the really famous store was Downstairs Records, which was in the train station on 42nd Street.
Okay, sure.
And you go right down, and they had a lot of 45s, accessible because they were right there.
Sure.
Colony always had them behind a wall, so you'd have to ask for them.
A little more difficult.
Yeah, a little more difficult, but Downstairs Records had them right in front. So it was Downstairs. There were a couple of mom and pop stores on 8th Avenue. There was Frank's store. There was Rock and Soul, which has moved a couple of times, but as I said, they're still there now. They're still doing it. And J&R Music World.
Oh, okay.
J&R Music World had great selection of music. They had a beautiful GLI system set up, and they would have a live DJ.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Those were mostly the places I would shop. And then every now and then, when Columbia would have one of those sales where they go buy 8 records for $1.
Sure.
You would do that.
Absolutely.
Finish your commitment, quit, and then do it again.
Yeah.
I'm sure they were curious. Why was he ordering the same record twice? Because I needed 2 of them.
Of course.
So I would do that with albums with Columbia. Yep.
Wow.
Anything, any hustle you could do to get the records. I'm like, okay,
sure.
I'll buy 8 records for $1.
For sure.
I'll pay whatever you need me, and I'll quit.
Yeah.
After a while, they say, yeah, we don't need you anymore. But that's what I would do.
Were there any other people in your neighborhood around your age who had a huge record collection as well that you remember?
There was a guy, a much older gentleman that was a counselor. He would help us out. He owned 2 turntables, but he was very, very protective of them. He never permitted anyone to touch them. And I remember I was like a puppy looking at food, say, damn, I'm hungry.
Yeah.
But I was never, I'm not a forward type of person, aggressive, so I wasn't going to ask. If he didn't tell me, would you like to, I wouldn't. And he never did.
Okay.
And I always remembered that, and I said, I'll wait.
Yeah.
I'll wait till it's my time.
Yeah.
But he had 2, they weren't 1200s or anything like that. But they were 2 turntables, and I would look at them and go, wow. I wonder what he does with them, because I don't think he did. And he had a few records, but I could say that when I started, and I took it very seriously, a lot of DJs emerged in Hell's Kitchen. After that, which they they openly admit, Doc was the person that got me interested in. I think still today.
Sure.
Some of them do it as a hobby, but they do it.
They
do it, and it's nice to know that they because before me, there were no DJs in Hell's Kitchen.
Sure.
Hell's Kitchen, we had Lisa. She grew up with us. She's a good friend of ours. She's from the neighborhood. We had some boxers, some basketball players. a lot of musicians, a lot of Latin musicians.
Sure,
They would
sure.
meet with guys from the barrio and play salsa.
Absolutely.
The Cheetah was in my neighborhood, which was the most famous Latin place in the world.
Wow.
The Pioneer All-Stars played there. The Cheetah was on, I believe, 54th Street.
Sure.
But DJs, no. I was the first one to come, and then when they saw that you can actually do this, if Doc can do it. So there was a lot. A lot of them fell.
Yeah.
Oh, this is too much work.
Yeah, for sure.
I remember, this is a really funny story, and I try to help a guy out, but again, some people take things the wrong way. I was spinning outdoors in Hell's Kitchen. I always went to the shade.
Okay, yeah.
Always to the shade.
Sure.
So one of my neighborhood guys, he was like a week later, he was a DJ. I was like, okay. He sets up across the street. I said, you really shouldn't set up across the street. What are you talking about? I know what I'm doing. I'm like, you're under the sun.
Yeah.
You don't want to be under the sun.
Yeah.
Why? Okay, I'll leave you alone.
Dude,
20 minutes later, his needle's wobbling like this. And he goes, what the hell? I said, I told you, you're under the sun. Your records are melting. Oh, damn. I said, it's not that easy.
Yeah.
And it requires some common sense.
For sure.
I think after that, he quit. But I told him, don't play under the sun. Come to the side I'm on.
Yeah.
He said, under the sun, it looked like hills.
Oh, my God.
And it was just hilarious because I told him in advance. So you can't play vinyl under the sun.
Absolutely.
It'll melt. And he learned it the hard way.
Absolutely. Wow.
And that was it for him. He was one of the ones that said, I'm not in this.
Wow.
And there's still a handful. One of them is in Florida. There's a couple in New York. But they came in after me, and they also came to a lot of my events.
Sure.
And then they went on their own and did their own thing, and it's pretty cool.
Very, very cool. So obviously there were a lot of block parties in the Hell's Kitchen neighborhood that you DJ'd at or attended. What about in other parts of New York? Did you go to many of the block parties or parties that were out in the parks in the Bronx?
Oh, yeah. I went to the Bronx. I went to El Barrio.
Sure.
I went to some in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I mean, they were really nice. Violence wasn't a thing. You didn't concern yourself with violence. You went to hear, there were guys that went to meet women.
Sure.
Guys like me went to hear records.
Yeah.
Let me see what this neighborhood's playing that maybe I don't know about.
Yeah.
Which is what you did in clubs too. But in the block parties and in private parties, they would take a magic marker and black out the label.
Sure.
So there was no Shazam.
Yeah.
You would try to remember and hum it to the guy at the record store. It goes like this. Oh, I know what that is. And I met a guy at the time. His name is Albert Marrero. He's probably one of the greatest in New York City. He's still alive. He's still with us. And he worked at Rock and Soul and many other stores. And he was the source.
Wow.
All I'd have to do is call him, hey, Albert, it sounds like this. And I would hum and he'd go, that's the dramatics.
That's amazing.
That's this, that's that. He's an amazing guy. He was one of my sources. But I would go to parties in the Bronx. The Bronx parties were always what they call spicy. They were always really good and a lot of energy. And that's where Andrew Flores is from.
Sure.
So he would love for me to go up there because he would kind of throw me in there. Let my guy play for a little while.
Yeah.
And then he'd have that look on his face like, watch what happens when they hear him.
Yeah.
Because I did everything at another level.
Sure.
It was like very concentrated and it had to be right.
Yeah.
So he always got a kick out of that. Now there's a thing in New York City that's been around, it's got to be at least 40 years. It's called the 9th Avenue International Food Festival. It hasn't happened in 2 years because of a pandemic, but it happens every summer in May. I believe this year's the 14th and the 15th, something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I was there when it started, the very first one. So I would go onto 9th Avenue, and whoever had an apartment with a fire escape that faced the avenue, I would ask their mother, can I set up here? Can I play music from here? Oh my God, those experiences are amazing because when I would start playing, you couldn't get through the block. So there was one entire block where you could not pass because everybody's dancing in there. And then the police there knew us. It wasn't like what they're trying to do now with policing and getting to know. We knew the cops. We knew all the cops from Hell's Kitchen, from the precinct. So they wouldn't get mad. They'd just look up at me and go, Ivan, because they would call me Ivan.
Sure.
People can't get through. Could you pause it? Like, they wouldn't say stop or take my equipment.
Sure.
But as I started in that festival, and I think I did it 3 years in a row before they started with the permits.
Okay.
And what we did the third year, when the police, there were some new cops, they said, you're going to have to shut it down. So I went from 50th and 9th, we went around 49th Street, that's Printing High School. We opened up a pole, set up there, and half the block filled Printing High School yard. And we just kept jamming there till about 8 at night. We decided the next year, it was so good, let's do a tournament. Let's do music, a basketball tournament, a handball tournament, and a a stickball tournament.
Sure.
And all the neighborhood, including the guys that would sell drugs, chipped in. We bought trophies. This is all us. This is like that RCNY thing. I said, let's do something that's exciting. And they would come. And then there was a hustle dance contest, and believe it or not, it was won by 2 guys. Because one of the guys was a good leader, but he knew how to follow. Better than a woman. So they went and danced, and they made it to the final, and they won. It was hilarious. It's like, look at this, how cool this is. These guys know how to dance so well, they were able to beat a traditional couple. And then we had the 3-on-3 tournament. They won their trophies, and we did all of this just for fun.
Wow. Yeah, so there's a lot you brought up just in that story that I am curious about, and since the last thing you mentioned was the hustle, were there some big hustle competition teams that were out of Hell's Kitchen? Hell's Kitchen
had great dancers, individual dancers, but the Bronx.
The Bronx was it.
No, the Bronx was it, hands down. The Bronx. I my friend Andy was from the Bronx. He hustled very well, and he introduced me to Eddie and Lourdes. Eddie and Lourdes, I think they were on Star Search. They were the best, the absolute best. I know Eddie way before that, when he would come to a house party with Lourdes, and he would spin her like he would do, and her hand would break a lamp. And they just keep going. This is how far back I go with this stuff, where they go, did you know this? I was there in the beginning. I saw Eddie and Lourdes doing these things. I knew Floyd, which sadly passed away recently, and Floyd was another pioneer in hustle music. Oh my gosh, so many of the greatest, absolute greatest, were from the Bronx. So much flair, so much style. And I think in salsa it's the same thing. The Bronx dancers are amazing. Amazing. They call it on 2 dancers. But the Bronx, they led the way when it came to hustle dancing. And there's still hustle events in New York once in a while, and it's always the Bronx guys.
Absolutely. I think Willie's putting together 50th anniversary celebration.
He does cruises. He mentioned it to me. But the Bronx guys, absolutely, and the women as well. I mean, they invented that whole thing of throwing the girl in the air and spinning her around like a snake around their necks.
One thing Willie told me about, in the early days as the hustle was coming about, he said, one of the biggest places for them, of course, was the hooky parties. Were hooky parties a big thing in Hell's Kitchen?
Well, not in Hell's Kitchen, because we have a location, but I used to do them. I still have a flyer, and in order to kind of like fool the police or the school, my flyer had a fish hook and then a door key, and it would say today's hooky party. And we did them in a roller rink in the Bronx.
Wow. Okay.
Always. We would go to the Bronx to do it.
Yeah. Wait. Which roller rink? Where was it? Do you remember?
Name's on the tip of my tongue. It's on. What's that highway that has a overpass? That part of the Bronx.
Was it the Major D again?
No. It's
okay. The Bruckner. The Bruckner.
Yes, the Bruckner. There was a rink. I forgot the name of it, but it's right on the Bruckner.
Oh, okay.
That was the rink. The name's on the tip of my tongue, but that's where we would do it, and it was hook key. I'm sure I still have a few flyers, and it was the way we would keep people from knowing what it, the older folks, and it would get jam packed. I think we charged like $5 at the door.
Wow, yeah.
And we would do. You could roller skate. It was huge.
Yeah.
And you could hustle.
Wow.
It was so cool. Yeah, we used to do hooky parties. Hooky parties were a huge deal.
Yeah.
Huge. And at the same time, no drugs. No violence. None of that. None of that existed. It was always nice, and people had a great time, and they always showed up for the next one.
Yeah.
Hooky parties, big deal.
Hooky parties, for
big
sure.
Big deal. Yep.
And you also mentioned handball. Was handball a big thing?
Huge.
Yeah.
And again, the Bronx.
Yeah.
The Bronx. I used to go up there and watch this guy. He only had one arm.
Okay.
He's amazing. Anybody that plays handball in New York knows him. I don't know his name, but I used to go up there. Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
Go watch him in Yankee Stadium, and the handball courts out there. We had handball down in the Village. The Village was really popular for handball. In the other areas, we would do it for fun.
Yeah.
I played it, but I wasn't that and paddleball.
Yeah, paddleball.
But the real guys, Yankee Stadium.
Yeah. They did away with most of the courts there.
Yeah. Matter of fact, they got rid of. I think it became a parking lot.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. There's maybe 1 or 2 left.
Yeah. Handball was huge. Yeah. And also Coney Island or the beach up there in the Bronx. They had
Orchard Beach.
Sure. Yeah. Or any of those beaches, they had handball courts. That's where it was.
Absolutely.
That and basketball.
Absolutely.
Under the sun. 1,000 degrees. That's how you knew you were gung-ho.
Yeah, and so you already mentioned you play basketball around the Bronx too.
I played ball in the Bronx. Yeah, I played
everywhere. I'm sure.
I played in Christ the King. My friend Andrew Flores brought me out there. I played out in the street park with them. In New York City, I played all over here.
Sure.
And even after, when I finished playing in school and all, I got a handful of guys together, and we joined the 7-Up Hoop It Up, which was on TV, and we won that.
Wow.
We won the division in New York, and then we went to Philadelphia and won the whole thing, and get this little crappy trophy, but the memories were great.
For sure.
And we won it.
For
We won it. Me and my pal. And one of my guys playing was a guy from the studio that I met, because I play ball with artists as well. I play with E.P.M.D, Ed O.G, and the Bulldogs, because they start to talk crap.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I play a little basketball. I said, I play a little. I might not be as tall as you. I said, but I play a little bit.
Yeah.
And of course, when we played, then it was a different story. But yeah, I play with Eric and Parrish, and they're big.
Yeah.
Eric and Parrish are big, you know.
Okay, yeah, sure.
I think Redman may have played. Biz didn't play. Biz wasn't really into athletic, but I think Cool V might have. Yeah, matter of fact, Cool V did play. We played in Hackensack, New Jersey. After I would work on the album, we would go to the park and play. Yes, he did play. And a lot of hip hop guys, Ed O.G, with the guys came from Boston.
Sure.
We'd have a blast with them because they have that accent.
Yeah.
So if we needed a record and he'd say it's in the car, I'm like, I don't know what that is.
What are you talking about?
I don't know what that is. I said, there's an R.
Yeah.
So, we would have that kind of fun, but I got along with all of them.
Yeah.
We had a great relationship. Most of the guys that I ever made records with, all girls, Lyte, Latifah, we're best of friends.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we're best of, because I treat them all with respect.
Absolutely.
That's it. But yeah, handball we played, and basketball. Basketball for me was whoever, whenever.
Sure.
I'd get like someone would come in my house in the morning and knock. My father would be like, there's somebody at the door. Doc, there's this guy. He's like 6'3". I said, I'll be right there. And I'd brush my teeth, get dressed, and I'm going against whoever that guy is. Wow. That's how it was. They always came to my house. There's this guy. I'll be right there.
Yeah.
And I'd go and play, and we'd become friends.
Wow.
We'd become friends. I met a guy in the junior high school I went to. I used to go past there sometimes and play basketball. It's still there, the IS 44. They have a nice yard, and I went there with a friend of mine. We were walking by, and I saw these guys playing. I said, I feel like playing, and I went in to play. Big, tall brother. His name was Gerald Tapper. I didn't know him at the time. So we're playing, and I'm like, I like the big guys, because I like to go against the bigger guys.
Sure.
So I started playing hard with him. And he's like, damn, like you go hard. I'm like, I love basketball. So we keep going. And then one of the guys that was with me says, yo, Doc, we got to go to the studio. So he turns around. He goes, wait a minute. You're Doc, like from BDP? I'm like, yeah. He goes, oh, my God. This guy's one of my greatest friends. I just met him. And that very same weekend, I took him. He's from Philly. I took him to the Spectrum.
Wow.
On stage. And he was so excited that I told him, listen, hold on to my bag, because I got to go on stage with KRS.
Sure.
And he swung his arms out of happiness and threw my bag into the crowd. And I said, oh my God. Luckily, there was nothing important. But he'll tell you that's how we were. If you were cool, I said, listen, you from Philly, you ever been to the Spectrum? I go watch games. I said, you ever been on stage?
Yeah.
I'll bring you. And he thought I was lying. I brought him to the stage.
Wow.
Yeah, his name is Gerald Tapper. We call him Big Tap.
Okay.
And he was one of my guys in the Hoop It Up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we just met on the street.
Wow.
And he, when he knew, after we were having a great time, but once he knew I was in music, he's like, oh my God, I know who you are. But many people didn't know that Doc was Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't in videos.
Sure.
And they wouldn't have known me by seeing me, because you didn't see me in a lot of things. I'm in a few videos, but not a lot.
Yeah.
So, once he heard the guy, he's like, oh my God, you're DJ Doc from BDP? I'm like, yeah. And that's how we became friends.
Wow.
Yep. And we're still friends today. And he
Wow.
lives in New York.
Wow.
And then I went to his house. I met his mother, his family when I was
Sure.
out there, and we became great friends.
Sure.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
for me, the music is a job, like a policeman or a sanitation man or a plumber. It's a job.
Sure.
That's why the hype doesn't work.
Absolutely.
If you get too caught in the hype, that thing comes down on you. Ooh.
Yeah.
No, it's a job.
Absolutely.
It was a job. I love it. I had a lot of fun traveling, but it was no more than that.
Sure.
No more than that.
Absolutely.
I remember after the Philly thing, this is where, in a nutshell, the whole hype thing comes to me. I went to do a show with BDP. We were on the Dope Jam tour. That was the Rakim tour.
Okay,
Us, Kumo D, Dougie Fresh. And depending on the town you went to, the local act would jump in.
Yeah.
So if we went to LA, Ice-T get in.
Okay, sure.
So we went to Virginia.
Okay.
I believe the place was called the Virginia Squire. One of the great things about KRS, he is 1,000% what you hear.
Yeah.
There's no flashing bulbs, sound effects, stories. He had no gadgets, no gimmicks.
Sure.
Everyone had some nice visuals, which were great. We didn't have that.
Yeah.
We were just raw.
Yeah.
So he and I would talk in the dressing room. What do you want to do? We'd figure it out right before the show.
Yeah.
No practice.
Wow.
Because we already knew each other.
Sure, sure.
I was his DJ. I was helping in producing and engineering. I was his roadie.
Yeah.
Whatever he needed, I would do. So we went to do that show. And sometimes we'd start Criminal Minded, and I'd backspin it a few times, and he'd pause his verse, whatever sounded cool.
Sure.
So we did the show. The show was good. It wasn't great, but it was good.
Yeah.
When we got off the stage, one of the guys that was with, what was the name of that group? Heavy D.
Oh, okay.
One of Heavy D's guys came up and he goes, "Doc, that show was ridiculous." And right there, it snapped. I said, "Oh my God, it's hype."
Yeah.
Right there, it hit me.
Yeah.
Right there.
That's hype, yeah.
It changed everything I saw going forward.
Wow.
And that was just in the middle of my career.
Sure.
And I went, oh my God. It's so embedded that they believe it.
Yeah.
I can see what you put out there, but you actually believe it.
Sure.
And that's when I knew a big chunk of this is all hype.
Yeah.
Because the show was not bad in any sense. It didn't suck. It wasn't boring, but it wasn't great.
Yeah.
I did nothing special.
Sure.
I did nothing that I went, that was special. No,
Yeah.
I did a solid show. It was tight. And he made it seem like I had two turntables floating in the air.
Sure.
And that point going forward, I always used Chuck D as an example. Don't believe the hype.
Yeah.
Because the majority of it's hype.
Sure. Absolutely.
Because I always had a way to determine it. I said, if anyone ever thinks that they're not part of hype, try this. Take 4 guys, whatever they're, DJs, producers, put them behind a curtain. There's no mic.
Yeah.
Nobody can hear the tone of your voice. Nobody knows who you are. You do it for 20 minutes. You do it. I promise you, all 4 will say no.
Yeah.
Because without the hype,
Yeah.
they won't make an effect.
Yeah, for sure.
Then it's necessary to scream and things exploding, and because without that, the skill has to come into effect.
Absolutely.
So, same thing with production. Production, I once I learned about it and how it was made, I said, not that difficult.
Yeah.
Creativity is important.
Sure.
But producing, not that difficult.
Yeah.
And of course, people would take it and hype it to the levels where you thought you were dealing with Stevie Wonder. Now that is a genius.
Yeah, Stevie
That's
Wonder.
a genius.
Absolutely.
A guy looping a song, not so much.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
You know,
for
I've
sure.
done them pure. I've done them where I had looping. I've done all types.
For sure.
And if somebody told me this record you did it didn't do this, but it did this, and it's true, I would say you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to tell you, no, you're not hearing this. No, because that's hype.
Yeah.
So when that one guy told me, man, that was fire, I went,
Hype.
not really.
Yeah.
And that's when I went into the dressing room by myself, and I went, wow. And I remember also another moment, we were in Germany. We were on the Autobahn. Boogie Down Productions.
Sure.
So it's a long stretch limo, and it's doing 80 because you got to do a minimum.
Yeah.
Now, the majority of the guys are in that corner of the limo, and they're, having a good time, and whatever. And I went to the corner, the other corner, there was no one there, and they're like, you all right? I'm good. And I remember lowering the window, and I could see the moon. And I looked at the moon, and I looked at them, and I'm like, wow, what am I doing here? Like, I'm a little punk kid from Hell's Kitchen, New York. I have nothing to do with hip-hop. I didn't grow up in it. I grew up in salsa and R&B.
Yeah.
I said, this is a blessing.
Yeah.
I was thankful, but you couldn't get me overly excited because that's hype.
Sure.
I'm not going to believe that I can fly out of this window. I'm thankful. I'm almost ashamed to be there.
Yeah.
In the sense, I'm saying, like, I work hard, but wow, look at where I'm in Germany.
Yeah.
Most people don't leave my neighborhood the corner.
Yeah.
If you do a wedding, you're happy.
For sure.
I'm DJing stadiums.
I know.
Where if I move my hand a certain way, 20,000 people are waving around. And I remember I would get goosebumps out of that because I enjoyed it.
I'm sure.
I was like, and like, oh my God. Like where you come, if you know where I come from, then you too can feel it.
Yeah.
But if I had hype involved, I would have said, I deserve more.
Of course.
No, I don't deserve more. Whatever they gave me, I'm thankful for.
Yeah.
Because I worked for it, but it wasn't, I never got it easy. It was always difficult. It was difficult being Latino.
Absolutely.
It shouldn't have been, but it was.
Sure.
It was difficult that I didn't get high.
Sure.
I didn't partake in a lot of things that maybe a lot of guys did simply because I don't.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't fit in.
Yeah.
So it was triple the work to prove that I could do what was necessary. Where if I just took part in a few things, I didn't have to work as hard. That doesn't exist for me.
Sure.
And it's mostly my ethics. It's just the way I'm built.
Absolutely.
I have to give 100%, or I'll tell you I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want. It's pretty easy. I don't want it easy.
Yeah.
I don't. You know, I don't want free money.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll give you an extra this. I don't want an extra this.
Yeah.
It's just me. It just is me. But when you hire me, you know you're getting 1,000%.
Absolutely.
And no hype whatsoever.
Yeah.
I just no. I don't want nothing to do with
Just
hype.
quality.
I don't have anything in my personal equipment that goes wah wah wah. No, I don't.
That's good.
I have a couple of mics only because in the last few events I talk about cancer.
Sure.
So and even that's difficult for me because I don't like being upfront.
Yeah.
But I'll say, listen, everyone, especially gentlemen, men are afraid to check prostate cancer. I had prostate cancer.
Yeah.
And I tell them it's a simple blood test.
Sure.
Just take a few minutes out. It can save your life.
Absolutely.
It saved mine.
Absolutely.
And I'll talk about it, and I'll tell them, listen, 2 years now. 2 years ago, I could have lost my life.
Yeah.
I remember when I did my first outdoor concert event for Hell's Kitchen, the day before I found out I had cancer. So while I was at the concert, I wasn't there.
Wow.
My friends told me it was great. I'm like, no, it wasn't.
Yeah.
I said I wasn't focused. Nobody knew because I didn't say it, but in my mind, I was like, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. It just kept circling. And then the next morning, while everyone was recovering from hanging out or going out, I was in the hospital getting needles stuck in me and all kinds of gadgets and just to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Very tough journey. But I share that because I want people to, you know, why should you die if you don't need to?
Sure.
Simple, little blood test. Listen to the doctor. Sometimes close your mouth, listen to your ears, you know, and they'll help you. So I talk about that with my mics. But otherwise, no mics, no wham wham, none of those effects.
Sure.
Everything is two hands. The CDs I gave you, you'll see. All of that is live.
Yeah.
And you'll see how I combine songs. That's all done with my hands and with the concept. That's the way I learned in the late 70s. And the thrill was I got from one song to another and you didn't realize how I did it. That's it. That's how you know you did it right.
A really good DJ.
But just stopping it and playing another song, just put the radio on. That's what they do on the radio.
Absolutely.
That's what they do on the radio. Oh, how you doing? But next song.
Yeah.
Oh, how you doing? Next. Oh, no. You don't need me for that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'd rather not.
Me,
No matter how great,
yeah.
it wouldn't happen.
Sure.
It's the truth.
Absolutely.
And when you're dedicated to what you do, you got to make it work.
Absolutely.
You have to, because if you don't, you feel like you didn't accomplish your job.
Sure.
That's why a lot of engineers. I mean, I'm sure it still happens today, but coming up when I came up, Patrick Adams, Eli Tubo, Nordy, Cotto, Yanni Papadopoulos, rest in peace. Myself, Christopher Irish. There were so many in Power Play that I'm so proud to be a part of that group.
Yeah.
And we knew when a person came in, I like his idea. He's so totally lost, and that's not an insult. That's just a reality.
Sure.
I don't play baseball. I remember trying to umpire a game. I got hit in the jaw once with a fastball with kids. I said, I will never play this game in my life. Because I don't have the reflexes.
Sure, absolutely.
It is my reality. I play softball, but I'm not touching a hard ball. I don't know how baseball players could hit a curve.
Yeah.
That's just, like you need a skill to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when they would see it, Patrick Adams mentioned it recently in a piece of the documentary hopefully to be released by Power Play.
Right? Yeah.
He explains, if we didn't do what we did, you wouldn't know who they are.
Absolutely.
Because if you let them, and sometimes we would, sometimes we'd say, well, you know what? There's enough energy and ego.
Sure.
Here you go.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I'm not your producer. I'm an engineer. I'm supposed to hit play and record when you tell me to.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to punch you in when you tell me to.
Yeah.
How you play keyboards and all, that's on you, not me.
Yeah.
We couldn't do that because we knew the note was flat. We like for instance, if a person was playing flat and he'd go play something, I'm like, your keyboard's out of tune. You sure? Do you have a tuner? I said, pick up the telephone.
Yeah.
It's 440 hertz. Listen to the telephone, hit the key. Oh my God, you're right. I said, tune the key to the telephone tone.
Yeah.
That's the cheapest way to tune anything.
Sure.
Because it's 440. If they understood you were trying to help them, now you're a team.
Yeah.
If they felt you're trying to embarrass them, now you're not.
Yeah.
I'm never there against you. If you hire me, I'm going to do absolutely everything to make you sound great.
Absolutely.
And if you're smart, you'll listen.
Absolutely.
I had an outstanding relationship with KRS, E.P.M.D, Redman.
Sure.
Redman is outstanding. He doesn't get the credit he needs.
Yeah.
Biz. And why? Because they would listen.
Yeah.
Now, if they go to an average person, that person's starstruck.
Yeah.
When they do something, yo, that's so dope. And I'm like, no, it's not. No, we need to do that again.
Sure.
After a few times, then they realize.
Yeah.
So when it's all done and the whole crowd is, Doc, where are we? I said, this is good. This needs to be done over. He'd say, yo, let's do it over.
Yeah. Sure.
Because
sure.
I'm not. You don't pay me every time I tell you to do it over.
Yeah.
I'm telling you because my ears tell me no. And that sense I tell you that I get when something moves me.
Yeah.
I'm like, ooh. When I first heard KRS, he was like a kid.
Yeah.
And I went, ooh, he's special.
Absolutely.
This guy's special, different. He and KRS changed the whole game.
Absolutely.
And I was there with him, with Scott, when Scott got murdered. I went through all of that with them. I was there from the beginning. I remember when they came in, not KRS per se, but the whole B-boy posse.
Sure.
I had to make a decision. They're either going to step on me or I'm going to control the situation.
Yeah.
The owner of the studio, Anthony Arfey, told me, Doc, there's a posse of people coming from B-boy records. Nobody knows who they are.
Yeah.
I don't know who they are. Can you take them? I was like, sure, Tony, no problem.
Sure.
I wait for them. They come in, all this noise, grabbing their crotch, all that. It wasn't Chris, but there was a bunch. JVC
Sure.
Force. There was other groups.
Sure.
Not
sure.
just BDP.
Absolutely, yeah.
So they all come in the studio. So once they pile in, I walk in. There's coats on top of my console. So I said, fellas, all of this shit gotta go.
Yeah.
All this you gotta take all of this out.
Yeah.
And I didn't know who Chris was at the time. I said,
Sure.
whoever's first is here. The rest of you, get out.
Yeah.
I said, I'll call you according to when we need you.
Absolutely.
It wasn't disrespectful, but I had to do that because if not, it would have been a circus.
Absolutely.
From there, the few groups that tried kind of fell off, and BDP stood with us.
Sure.
And my impression was enough that I became a part of the group.
Yeah.
I never asked, can I, will I?
Sure,
KRS
sure,
asked
sure.
me, can you do this? I said, I can do that.
Absolutely.
Can you do this? This person's not here. Can you play that? I said, I can play that.
Yeah.
Now, my growing up in Hell's Kitchen tells me I don't need to ask you to respect me.
Sure.
I don't need to ask you to give me my proper credit.
Sure.
Because I'm treating you like my brother.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you what you asked because you asked for it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that when I am supposed to get mines in return, you're going to do your part as well because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
That doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Not in hip-hop.
Yeah.
Maybe in other genres as well. Sometimes, but not always. Because the facts, truth be told, if that was a reality, I would have already received a Lifetime Achievement Award. I know. And I'm that's again, I'm not about hype, I'm not a front man, but I've done an amazing amount of work.
Absolutely.
Like outrageous amount of millions and millions of CDs, records, and downloads around the entire globe have my name on them.
Sure, absolutely.
But it is what it is. There was a point in my career where it really bothered me.
Yeah.
You grow.
Yeah.
Doesn't bother me as much now. If anything, I'm disappointed.
Sure.
But if I can speak and help maybe somebody else learn this or that. But I went in there and I treated all of them as if it was my friend from Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah.
Or my cousin or my brother that I trust totally. And we had great times. But some of it wasn't, you didn't get what you thought you would get. And I'm not talking about money.
Sure.
Money comes and goes.
Recognition,
right? Respect.
Respect, yeah.
Because I respect Bruce Sweden. He died.
Sure.
I never met him. But I respect him immensely. I respect Patrick Adams.
Yeah.
Wow, what a genius. I respect Nordy Cotto. I respect all these fellas that come up, Eli Tubo. There's competition from other studios. Whether they see it or not or knew it, I respect them.
Absolutely.
I had engineers, and forgive me for because there's so much that comes to me.
Sure.
I had engineers that would go out of their way to try to ruin a 2-inch tape knowing that it was coming to me.
Wow.
And I never, back then nor now,
Yeah.
because if they knew me, they would have said, I wouldn't give Doc a hard time.
Yeah.
We're on the same team.
Sure.
We're both. You're gonna have credit for one recording. But we're together.
Yeah. Absolutely.
When I started E.P.M.D, they were working with Charlie Murata. I always had a great relationship, even from a distance, because he didn't do anything to hinder my work, and I'm taking his work to another level.
Yeah.
I never said, listen, it's me. Erase his name. No,
Not
he
at
was
all.
there. I would have engineers. When we would do what we did, we would synchronize tape machines.
Oh, okay,
so we would
okay.
have to lay either a FISC tone, FSK, frequency shift keying, which is how the telephones work.
Okay.
And that would synchronize a device, but it will only synchronize it on the one. You couldn't pause in the middle of a tape and go. It
Sure,
lost.
sure.
You can only do that with SMPTE when you do audio for video or whatever. So whether they would use SMPTE or FISC, they would take the signal, put it through a digital delay, and delay it by a certain amount of seconds, then print it to the tape.
Wow.
Then they would synchronize using that method, and when it came to me, the machine would synchronize late.
Wow.
It took me literally 5 seconds. My assistant goes, something's wrong, and I laughed, and he goes, what are you laughing at? I'm like, it's on purpose.
Yeah.
He goes, what do you mean? I said, whatever that empty is, put it through a delay.
Yeah.
Bring it to 0.5. Boom, locks perfectly. He goes, why would they do that? Or they would drop a low-end signal to tape and kill the low end.
Wow.
Why?
I know.
I would never send tapes. My tapes are coming to you in excellent condition because
Sure.
it's me.
Sure.
Why would I send you something, make you work twice as hard just to figure out how to make it play?
Yeah.
I went through that.
Wow.
These are things that are not in newspapers or
Yeah.
on TV or
Sure.
you hear a record. You don't know how hard it was
Sure.
to get past this simply because you had some kind of opinion about my work or me or something. And I never had a disagreement with anyone in the hip-hop community ever. Ever.
Yeah.
I was there to help. I remember when my daughter was little, my daughter Crystal, I'm very dedicated. So weekends were always Crystal's.
Sure.
And E.P.M.D was on the road. Russell Simmons called me because I was signed to Rush Productions Management, RPM.
Oh, yes.
Russell called me personally. Doc, E.P.M.D's on the road. You got to chill, which I didn't do, the original mix. He said the echo is too loud, which it was.
Sure.
That's how you knew that the person was new, the engineer, because he would feed the delay, but the return was so loud, it would peak. So it blows out speakers.
Sure.
Causes distortion. So Russell goes to me, we really need a remix, and we need it badly, and I know you're with Crystal. Bring her.
Uh-huh.
I said, Russell, he goes, I know what it means to you, Doc, but this is an emergency.
Yeah.
He sent a car for me. Me and
Okay.
Crystal went to the studio. I redid the whole thing. Car brought me back. That's how I am. I didn't go, no, it's Crystal and that's it.
Sure.
I said, okay, I'll bring Crystal with me.
Yeah.
I have pictures of Crystal in the studio since she was a little kid.
That's funny. Wow.
She knew LL and all of them before she knew. They were just people.
Yeah, of course.
Because
yeah,
she was
yeah,
a little
yeah.
guy. And
Yeah.
she always came with me. All of them know about Crystal because I always brought her. Because I was dedicated to my time with her. But he called me for that and I would do it. When I signed to RPM, he had Leo Cohen bring me in and me and Leo had a talk. And Leo
Sure.
said to me, quote unquote, I know you're the secret behind a lot of this. And I
Yeah.
said, what secret? He goes, I know.
Yeah.
It gets to me. You know, I know what you do and what you don't get credit for.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot I did because I had to, because the record had to come out right.
Sure.
You know, you could be hitting a drum machine for 20 minutes and I'm like, can I ask you, is this what you're trying to do?
Yeah.
That's it. Very famous statement in the studio. I like that. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't translate into co-production, additional
I know.
production, any monetary. No, it doesn't. It just translates into thank you.
Yeah.
And even if you don't want to pay me, but you give me the credit, that means I'm going to get work somewhere else.
Absolutely.
Not if you don't tell people it was me.
I know.
It is what it is.
Wow.
Eventually people knew because you can hear my sound no matter what group I work on.
Sure,
You
sure,
go,
sure.
that's Doc.
That's
I can hear it.
very distinctive.
And when he's gone, that's not Doc.
Yeah.
That it doesn't have, it just doesn't feel like it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I went through that period and I'm like, I can't change that. I can't change people. I'm not going to waste my time suing people. This is not who I am.
Sure.
I'll continue to do what I do and I'll enjoy it as best I can. Maybe one day that somebody will get past that ego and say, you know what? That was him.
Yeah.
And that wasn't me. That was him.
Yeah.
If you listen to early BDP, especially By All Means Necessary, when Chris rhymes, he talks to a guy
Yeah.
with a little funny voice.
Yeah.
That's me.
That's you.
That's
Yeah,
my
yeah,
voice.
yeah.
I did that.
Yeah.
Because he didn't have, I said, Chris, I'll do it.
Yeah. I might have to go back and listen to that.
Just listen to it.
Yeah, I will.
When he talks, and also in I'm Still Number One remix, there's a guy.
Yeah.
Sounds like a funny guy. That's me.
That's you. Okay, sure.
I just went in and did it for him. When he did By All Means Necessary, a lot of the stuff you hear is me live cutting it. I'm cutting the looping, not
Sure.
looping it.
Sure.
My philosophy, all the stuff you hear in the beginning, yes.
Yeah.
'Cause you're a philosopher, that's all me.
That's amazing.
That's all me.
I love that song.
And then
yeah.
all you hear those horns, that's a record that I'm cutting in, not a loop.
Sure.
All of that. And then for Stop the Violence from
Yeah.
that same album,
Yeah.
if you listen to it carefully, again, because you don't really know in the beginning, he says BDP is the freshest.
Yeah.
And then
yeah,
you hear
yeah,
something going whoop, 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 backwards.
Sure.
Well, if you listen carefully, when the beat drops in, the song's going forward and backward.
Wow.
I did that by flipping the 2-inch tape upside down and cutting into a reverse 2-inch tape.
Wow.
And then I went into it, and then I faded my way out. And then when you flip it back around, it goes, and you hear it going, that's not a gimmick, that's me.
Sure.
But I had to flip the tape.
That's amazing.
If a loop was too long for a sampler, you could put the loop on a piece of 1/2-inch tape, edit it together with tape, and with a pencil pull it away from the machine because it was too long, and it would loop.
Wow.
You would run that onto 2 tracks, and then you would have to synchronize live to that loop.
Oh my God! Wow.
If you listen to Dope Beat, I got a dope beat.
Yeah.
You got a dope beat. Well, there's a tom-tom in there that goes doom-ka-doom, bah,
Sure.
da-na, doom-ka-doom. I'm playing those toms live on a
way.
Yamaha RX-11.
I love that song too.
Yeah, and I played those on the RX-11.
Yeah.
Because I used whatever was in the studio. We didn't have
Sure.
money like that.
Sure.
And in the very beginning, we didn't have sampling like that. We
Sure.
had, I think, an emulator that sampled for like a second, which sucked.
Wow.
So I would come up with whatever I needed to come up with. So there was a lot of things I did on BDP, by all means necessary, that would have, were it to have been maybe rock, it would have been more recognized.
Sure.
The concept would have been like, wow.
Yeah.
But not only with being early hip hop, but not getting the credit I required. They didn't even know.
Yeah.
But now you listen and you go, wow, now I can envision him flipping the tape.
Absolutely.
But it was the 2-inch tape flipped upside down, and then I cut into it, and I did a lot of work on self-destruction.
Okay,
And
sure.
self-destruction, you weren't only dealing with a project, you were dealing with multiple egos.
Yeah.
You know, some people didn't want anyone in the room when they rhymed.
Yeah.
Some people wouldn't come into the studio if another person was there. It was just like, oh my God, we're just making a record.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of challenges.
Wow.
There was a lot of challenges. It wasn't as simple as, man, that's the hottest record out.
I know.
You don't know what it went to put that record together.
Yeah. Not only all of the technological innovations that you had to come up with on the fly.
On the fly.
The music, the playing of probably just a handful of instruments that you had to make come together, and dealing with personalities, all of that.
All of that, especially the
All of
personalities. And when we needed a new snare, I would just take a piece of wood or a box, mic it, hit it, and that would be the snare on top of whatever snare I was using, and I would layer it. Another thing on the fly, I believe I mentioned to you over the phone, Scott LaRock had been murdered. Our first concert is Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
I normally spin for Chris, but because Chris wanted to show respect to Scott, we all agreed that instead of me spinning, we would place a big picture of Scott on the turntables, and I would do the show to a reel-to-reel. So we did the show live in Power Play. I did it to tape, made sure the levels were perfect because I knew we were going to the Garden.
Sure.
One of his, I think it's a roadie or a bodyguard, one of them was carrying the reel. When we went into Madison Square Garden, he dropped it.
No.
I didn't know until like 5 minutes to showtime. Ladies and gentlemen, coming on stage, BDP. And Chris comes to me, he goes, Doc, they dropped the reel-to-reel. I could have easily turned around and said, I didn't drop it.
Yeah.
I said, show me the reel. Where is it? No panic, just show it to me. And we went, I flipped it over. One side was completely smashed. I'm like, the take-up reel is no good. And I'm thinking, what can we do to make it pull?
Yeah.
And I said, wait a minute, there's 2 cap stands, there's a pinch roller. Let me try something. So I held the pinch roller, that little thing that goes up with the tape. I held it with my finger, and I noticed that the reel moved. I'm like, I got it. Go on stage.
Wow.
I said, just go. I said, follow everything the way we did it, disregard this. So when they went on stage, I had the reel come through, I had the tape here, and I held the cap stand here. And as soon as he nodded, I hit play, and everything ran to the floor, but it ran.
Wow.
So that first show,
unreal.
Exactly. So it happened because I figured it out on the spot. But if not, there would have been no show because I didn't bring records. Because we were going to do this, and this is because somebody dropped the reel. I would have preferred to let me take it.
Absolutely.
But I didn't have control of the reel. But we got past the show, and then he thanked me, and I said, hopefully that doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
Because that could have really sucked. Because we first time in Madison Square Garden, and we can't even perform.
I know. Wow.
So that was a real challenge.
Wow.
That was you see that in a rock concert or something. It's like, oh my God. To me, it was like, how do we do? What do we do? How do we fix this?
Absolutely.
We fixed it. We moved on. We got rid of the reel-to-reel. I think from that, whenever we needed a show that needed tape, we would do it off that.
Okay.
A portable DAT.
Sure.
But and then I always brought records.
Yeah.
Always brought records,
Yeah,
just in case.
Just in case.
Yeah, but we learned from that. We got past it. that was one of those moments where it's like, oh my God. And you know, deep down inside, you say, man, I hope they can really appreciate
Sure.
that. If I'm here, no other group has me. Just you.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the game, it just doesn't feel that way.
Sure.
It doesn't feel like that work ethic meant anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it means more to the fans because they love the sound.
Sure.
So the fans that buy his records or anybody's records, they're like, wow, I really enjoyed this. Did you hear what he did here? Listen to this. And one of my greatest, now this is one of my greatest, receiving one of my greatest compliments. Whenever I did records, especially for Jive hired Chris Geringer as a mastering engineer. I never met him, but he did great work. So, might have been Bunny Wailer. I did an album for Bunny Wailer, and Bunny said, not only do I want you to do this, I want you to go to mastering. I said, I'm not the engineer. He goes, no, I just want you there.
Sure.
I said, okay. So, I go to the mastering lab. Chris happens to be the engineer, but I don't know him.
Okay.
He's a gentleman there.
Sure.
I come in, I say, how you doing? Forgive me, I don't mean to interrupt. I was just asked by the artist if I could sit here. I'll be quiet.
Yeah.
I give the respect I want in return. So I give him a package. I go sit down, and he goes, well, thank you. He goes, don't worry about it. He goes, you know, it's not that difficult or whatever. He opens the bag up, and when he pulls it out, he chuckles, and he goes, oh, this is nothing. It's a piece of cake. I said, what do you mean? He goes, this is Doc Rodriguez. That was huge for me because he didn't know me.
He didn't know you.
So
yeah.
that's what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
So he goes, I do this guy constantly. He goes, his levels are incredible. He goes, I barely do anything.
Wow.
And I said, that's me. And he said, wow, it's a pleasure to meet you. I said, you don't understand. You did something really big for me because you don't know me.
Yeah.
Only two people have done that. Him and Babito Garcia. Babito Garcia is very famous in this DJ sneakers. He wrote an article in a magazine. He and I never met.
Yeah.
And it was called Latinos in Hip Hop.
Okay.
And he said, if you're going to show any respect for Latinos in hip hop, you must acknowledge Ivan Doc Rodriguez. And I met him in Florida at the How Can I Be Down conference. We were both speakers. And I said, dude, I appreciate what you did. He goes, I did what was right. It wasn't personal. I don't know you.
Sure.
It's a reality.
It's the history.
It's the history of what you've done. And I said,
absolutely.
I appreciate that more than a Grammy.
Yeah. And
him and Chris are the only two that ever did something like that that came strictly from my work.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's interesting just to think, you know, just from like an archival perspective, because I come across histories all the time working with, you know, all different kinds of archival, whether it's documents or photographs or recordings, whatever it might be, and sometimes it's only 20, 30, 40 years after the fact that people start to piece together all of these, but you've left literal evidence of all of your so much evidence. I mean, you know, it's there, and it's going to be pieced together completely at some point, even if it hasn't been as far as the recognition of things like that go, because you know you can't destroy that evidence.
No, that's true. That's true.
It's there.
It's you know, and like I said, I enjoy a lot what I do. There are those points where you're like, wow, I really worked hard on this, and it doesn't seem like it makes a difference. But then you move on.
Yeah. And you know, it's so interesting to hear about all the different sampling techniques that you've developed over the years, and of course one that I think is also something that you deserve a lot of credit for. I don't remember which article it was that I was reading about this, but of course, you know, you were talking about how remixes had been around for a long time, but really you're the one responsible for like the first like mass sensation remix on the radio, right?
Oh yeah, KRS, I believe.
Yeah. KRS and Philadelphia.
Steady
Yeah.
Yeah, and those things used to happen in the simplest manners. Chris would call me.
Yeah.
I was still here in 80 seconds.
Sure.
I still hadn't had my own crib yet. I was still, you know, spending time with mom and spending time at my dad's. And I had a little room in 81st, which initially had 2 turntables, and I had a SP1200 and just a little few pieces.
Sure.
And Chris would call me, hey, what's going on? Yo, Doc, this happened, and we need to do this.
Yeah.
Now, here's the difference today and then. If Chris called me today, we finish the song tomorrow.
Sure.
By Wednesday, the song's on the radio.
Wow.
It didn't take months, none of that.
Wow.
So he said, Doc, we're going to do this thing, and it's for Steady B. I think Ann Carly was at Jive at the time, and Ann Carly asked him, can you guys do it? He said, yeah. I said, okay. I wasn't involved in the conversation, but I was at the end of it, Doc, can we do this? I'm like, sure.
Sure.
So he called me. He said, this is the song, whatever, because he had done the song already.
Yeah.
I'm Serious, I believe it's called.
Yeah, I'm serious.
So I listened to it, and I normally let my mind kind of work around the song. What do I feel? What works?
Sure.
What about the song don't I like?
Yeah.
And initially, I felt like a steady guitar riff, and I started thinking about Dr. John.
Oh, okay, sure.
Right place, wrong time.
Sure.
So if you listen to it, when he's going, this is a remix. It's going dana 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 dana. That's Dr. John.
Yeah.
And at the time, we could use samples because there was no big deal. It was way before Biz Markie.
Sure.
And the thing he had with what was the name of that song? Alone Again Naturally. Gilbert O'Sullivan.
Yeah,
that became a big problem, but that's a whole other story. But I did that, and then I said, you know what? I wanna use other elements. So I started putting together elements.
Sure.
So I would show up to the studio with a floppy disk.
Yeah.
Or two, if it was too many samples. And then he came in, Steady came in, his DJ came in. I loaded it. I took the original tape. I synchronized the first 12-inch, the first 2-inch tape to a second 2-inch tape, and all I used from the first was the vocals.
Wow.
I muted all the channels, and then the second 2-inch tape, I threw the tracks on.
Okay, sure.
And then we remixed it like that. And then Chris went in, this is a remix. Yo, Doc, break it down like this.
Yeah.
Now, I started to notice when there were songs where Chris would openly, because I've never in my entire career told someone, can you say my name?
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
That's all hype. I can't do that.
Yeah.
I don't. If I deserve it, you'll do it.
Yeah.
It took a little while, but once you start listening to By All Means Necessary,
Oh, sure.
my name's in it quite a bit.
It is.
Different songs, different ways, and when he did I'm Still Number One, and my name was the first lyric, I was like, wow,
Yeah.
that's pretty big.
That is.
Because I didn't ask for it.
Sure.
And then of course the remix. So he would find ways. Then we did another song where he goes, DJ Doc's in the back on the 48 tracks. Yo, Doc, break it down like this. So these are things that he wrote on his own.
Yeah.
Then Biz Markie did it. He put on in one of his songs. What was it he said? He said something with word Doc, and then of course Nice and Smooth on Let's Make It Funky.
Sure.
The breakdown where it goes DJ Doc makes it funky, and then he talk about everyone else. So it started becoming a trend where, at least in that form, they would show appreciation.
Yeah. Even.
But in all of that, I've never, ever, I've never asked. I think on one occasion, when we did By All Means Necessary, I did so much to that song, and I told Chris, "Can you ask Jive if they'll permit my hands in the video? My hands."
Sure.
Because the beginning of the song says, "So you're a philosopher?"
Yeah.
I said, "So I'm cutting it. Just show my hands, and the fact that my hands are light will create a process where people, whoa, who's that? You don't have to show my face."
For sure.
They refused.
Oh man.
They refused. Yep. And then the only person that succeeded in doing something like that was Spyder, because Spyder fought with Profile Records to let me be on a cover. So the label will always say he's not signed to us directly, we can't do it. So he kept fighting and fighting. And if you look at the 12-inch Spyder-D, How You Like Me Now, even though it's faded, I'm in the background.
Oh, okay, sure.
They did him in black and white, and they did me in like a muddied color, but you can see me.
You can see you.
And then it says featuring DJ Doc. Spyder was the one artist that always fought for me.
Yeah.
Always gave me the respect that I deserved and the credit. Always.
And he brought you into.
Without
the whole
Spyder, I
world
wouldn't
to begin
exist.
with, right? Yeah.
I wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for Spyder, I wouldn't be. I would probably be doing weddings and Sweet 16s, and that's it.
And he's the one who brought you to Power Play for the first time too, right?
Well, my friend Speedy brought me to meet him.
Oh,
yeah, Speedy was the one from my neighborhood that was a big, he was big into rhyming, and he wanted badly to be a rapper and all this, and he kept nudging and please. And one day I said, okay, I'm going to go with you to the studio, and after this, don't bother me no more.
Okay.
And when he took me, that's when I first met Spyder. And Spyder was pretty popular at the time. He had Place in the Beat was out, and he was producing Spyder-D and a few other artists.
Yeah.
And he was pretty popular. He was working for the Aleems. They had Nia Records, so he would work for them. He would do projects for them. And that's where he had the engineer, which happened to be the owner of the studio, trying to program something, and he just couldn't get it. I'd never touched a drum machine, but I was a wannabe drummer from childhood. So when he went to take a break, I asked Spyder, can I try that? I don't know what it is. What are you hitting?
Yeah.
He said, that's the kick, that's the snare. When you put these two together, you're going to hear a click. That's the tempo. I said, okay. And then I did I told him, sing it to me.
Yeah.
Like hum it. and he did the beat, and I did it in one take, and he went, that's it right there.
Yeah.
And I got a thrill out of it because I was a drummer for a few seconds.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, wow. And I immediately made up my mind, one way or another, I got to buy this. I can't afford it, but I got to get this, which I did eventually. And that's how I met Spyder. And then I guess he picked up instantly, he's got something.
Yeah.
And I think it was a week later, Spyder called me. He said, would you go on the road with me? That's why it was so shocking. I just met this guy. And I told my mother, I'm about to go on the road like on an airplane.
Yeah.
And from that point, I kept working with Spyder whenever he needed me, and then when other opportunities came, he supported me. He never said, like some people do, oh, you're with me, you can't do this, you can't. He always said, do what you got to do, and make sure you do it well.
Sure.
And then anything he needs, I still till today, he calls me, I'm there.
Yeah.
A track, whatever you need, you tell me, I'll do it.
Yeah.
You know, that's the respect I give.
Absolutely.
But if it wasn't for Spyder, initially Speedy introducing me to him. But if Spyder did not say to me, can we go on the road, I would not be, no one would know who I am.
Sure.
Because I wouldn't care.
And you know, in all honesty, there probably wouldn't be some of the best hip-hop albums of the 80s and 90s
exactly. That's the truth. A lot of that would not have happened because I wouldn't have had the influence I had in it.
Yeah.
When I first did the first E.P.M.D project, when they came in, I set up two gobos, which are for silence, and they were facing each other. I said, why are you facing each other? These things are in front of you. He goes, well, when we record in Long Island, the microphone hangs from a steam pipe, and we're basically spitting each other's face. I said, well, okay, you know, and then you did well with that. I said, but we go to a different level here. And then I had to get them not only to separate, but to kind of be able to flow without seeing each other.
Okay.
And they did it well. It took a little time, but they did it very well, and I did 5 albums for them.
Wow, yeah, of course, yeah.
You know, and I did K-Solo, Redman, so many other projects through them, but to me, the E.P.M.D's the greatest duo, true duo of all time.
Sure.
But it's a different level.
Yeah, different level.
You know, commercially, Run DMC are kings because of Aerosmith and all. But when it comes to street, gritty rhyming, E.P.M.D. As a group, and that's not to take anything away from any other groups, but they are just.
They work so well together.
Oh my God! So what you're saying has got to be one of the best hip hop singles in the world. Ever.
Yeah.
And 30 plus years later, play it and listen to the speakers. They still rumble.
I know.
Because I did a lot of stuff to that song to make sure it hit really hard.
Yeah.
Very proud of that song.
Yeah.
I saw them at Central Park a few years ago, and when it hit, I was like, wow, it still hits hard.
Yeah.
This many years later compared to what's out.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Absolutely.
And it was the work I did to make sure that it sounded a certain way and to make sure that I fixed certain things that they thought might work that I said. And sometimes I would have to fix it without saying anything.
Sure.
Because the egos with certain people are very fragile.
Yeah.
So I said, I can fix it. I don't have to tell them because and as long as they feel it, the job is done.
Absolutely.
Because, I changed that. No, I didn't want that change. You didn't even know I changed.
Yeah, I know.
It's the ego.
Absolutely.
So some things you leave alone, you just do it and leave it alone.
Sure.
And it worked.
And I was going to ask you if there were particular songs that stood out to you. That's clearly one of them.
Oh, yeah.
That you've worked on over the years. What are some other songs that you've worked on?
E.P.M.D?
Either E.P.M.D. or other.
MC Lyte. I finally got production credit on Poor Georgie. I got assistant production on Cappuccino. I did the remix for Cappuccino.
Yeah.
I did a remix for Cram to Understand You, and I did that on a 4-track cassette deck, a Tascam 4-track cassette.
That's insane.
And then I mixed it through an SSL console, but it was coming off a cassette. And if you listen to it, because of the way I set it up and I EQ'd it, and I would split the tracks on the console to give them like 3 frequencies, it sounds like it came from a 2-inch tape.
That's unbelievable.
I did a bunch of artists for Flavor Unit for Latifah.
Sure.
I worked on the first Fugees album.
Oh yeah.
I worked on the first Fugees album. I worked with Naughty by Nature when they were called the New Style. Before they were Naughty by Nature, they were called the New Style. It's a pink album. If you ever see it, I did that. The DJ had a high top fade, and it was the same 3 guys, Tretch and the other guy. Wow, it's so many. I did records for Tough City.
Sure.
I did Spoonie G, The Godfather. I worked on that. I worked with a lot of the. I lucked up because I worked a little bit with like the rappers that used to go who, and all of that. Throw your hands. I started right around there into KRS and Rakim.
Sure.
Because I worked on Paid in Full and By All Means Necessary. I worked on Criminal Minded. Criminal Minded, they didn't put my credit on it. And I don't think it had to do with Chris. I think it had to do with the record label.
The record label, yeah.
But I did all of Criminal Minded. I mean, not from scratch. There was some stuff recorded.
Sure.
But
sure.
Once I took Criminal Minded under my wing, I redid a lot of the kicks and snares. There were some parts that were out of time. I kept the part, but I pulled them back with a delay to try to get them in time because I'm a big fanatic of timing.
Oh, sure.
So I fixed a lot of that. I helped Scott a lot. Scott was a really good guy too. And it was only natural that for By All Means Necessary, I kind of took care of all those duties, and it was pretty much me and Chris.
Sure.
Gosh, there's so many. Bunny Wailer, I did a full album for Bunny Wailer. I worked with the Main Ingredient, the R&B group, Main Ingredient.
Yeah.
I did stuff for Tommy Boy. There was a group called the Mystidious Misfits with Sony. I don't know whatever happened to them, but I did a full album for them. I did the Youngsters, which ended up being Young Z and Rod Digger, which when she went with what's his name? Oh gosh, Buster. When she went with Buster, she blew. Yeah. I did their first album. They were kids.
That's crazy.
They were young kids. There was a really rugged group from Brooklyn called the Bushwhackers.
Oh.
Or sometimes they used to call themselves Bushwhack Ass.
Okay, Bushwhack.
Whatever they said it.
Yeah,
I did a full album for them, and I don't know what happened, but I did that album as well. I got the CD and I have a lot of track sheets and stuff from all the sessions. Gosh, it's just Biz. I did Just a Friend.
Sure.
I did that record that unfortunately he got sued on, and it was a concern. We discussed it because it was a really long sample, and I kept mentioning to him this is a bit on the long side.
Yeah.
But he said Burt Padell, which was the accountant. Burt Padell was huge. He was the accountant for like Mike Tyson, Michael Jackson. Nobody's bigger than Burt Padell, I think, on the planet.
Sure.
He said Burt Padell's taking care of it. So I said, okay. I mean, who's going to question Burt Padell?
Yeah.
Powerful man. And he ends up getting sued.
Man.
Big. The original CD got yanked from the shelves. They had to remove the song from it. Gilbert O'Sullivan said he didn't get permission. I personally didn't see what the big deal was because I think they were willing to pay him, but might have been personal. Who knows?
Yeah.
But he didn't like it. He clearly didn't like it. So he made a big deal out of it. And after that, sampling changed.
Yeah.
After that lawsuit.
Changed it, yeah.
Obviously, KRS, I did Criminal Minded, By All Means Necessary, and I did portions of the third album. Ghetto Music. Ghetto Music. I did portions of Ghetto Music. Of course, all the remixes. I did the 5 E.P.M.D. albums. I did 2 Redman albums. I did Redman and Method Man. It's just so many.
I know. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Many.
Absolutely.
I did a lot of singles. I did singles that you may not remember or even know, but there was a girl from Philly called Yvette Money. I did her first single. There was some girls from Select Records. I did their singles. I mean, there was a point where I couldn't do but one room at a time, but 3 artists hired me at the same time, and I would run from one studio to the other. And I said, I'm not going to be able to give you 100%. He says, I don't care as long as you're there. So I would tell the assistant, do this and do not do this. And I would go room to room to room.
Wow.
And all 3 records would be top Billboard the same year.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was just because I love what I do.
Yeah.
I said, I could do it. If I can't do it, I'll say no.
Sure.
And I remember doing those. I even did an early demo with Alicia Keys. Out of my personal studio, my private studio, because she came in with a gentleman that was a rapper. His name was El Muhammad. He was part of a management that was managing her.
Okay.
So he brought her to my studio.
I see.
And I believe I might still have some sort of disc that has her vocals, whatever it was she did. She did like some choruses and some other things for him.
Sure.
But I remember that.
Wow.
There was also that great sensation of doing something and then a week later hearing it on the radio.
Yeah.
Like I remember when we did Just a Friend and it knocked like Billy Joel off the charts and I was in utter shock.
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
Dude, you knocked Billy Joel off the charts. That's big.
That is huge.
That is really big. And, you know, I still hear these songs. I'll see kids bopping their heads and I'm like, they would not believe if I told them, yeah, that's my record. They'd be like, no, it's not.
And if you told them, you know, everything that went into it.
Yes. No.
Because, people don't really have much of a sense. I mean, you know, even people who work in recording studios now don't have much of a sense of what it took back then.
No, I remember going to a studio not too long back in, I think it was Electric Lady, which is big because Hendrix.
Sure.
And the assistant they gave me, and I've always prided myself in treating them with respect because assistants don't get treated right. Everybody has to be an assistant. And I told the young kid, well, I have 2 projects. One of them is Pro Tools, the other one's 2-inch tape. And he was very honest. He said, I could do the Pro Tools to help you, but I don't know what 2-inch tape is.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that machine right there, this tape? He goes, okay, how do you reel it?
Yeah.
And I said, well, you see there's a drawing.
Sure.
He said, I told him, follow the drawing with the tape and then reel it here and then it'll lock.
Yeah.
But it was shocking to me that he told me they didn't teach us that in school.
Yeah.
They don't teach any analog background.
Yeah.
Because it's really more about the money.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, Pro Tools, you click this, and to me, analog is more important because it's the basis.
Absolutely.
You go back, and I'm like, if you understand how this works, this is going to come out better, and you're going to create better.
Sure.
But he didn't know, which was unfortunate for him because he paid a lot of money to go to school.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't have any clue. I mean, if you told one of my guys, if they don't know how to reel up a tape, they would just fall on the floor laughing.
Yeah.
Because it's basic. It's like putting a cassette in.
For sure.
But not for the kid.
No, I know.
He told me, no, I don't know how to do that. And I showed him, and it was fine. But it just told me the direction things were going.
Yeah.
And manufacturers, they need to sell stuff. So they're going to do whatever's hot.
Absolutely.
There's no real... nobody gets together and says, listen, we need all to make money, but let's try to keep the culture right.
Yeah.
Let's try to keep the technology, that all these hundreds of years or whatever, and teach it going forward. No, whatever's the quickest way, make a buck, put some effects in it.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at a DJ controller now, it looks like some laboratory.
Oh, I know.
It's just outrageous.
I know.
And it's all gimmicks.
Yeah.
It's all gimmicks.
How many of those things do you actually need?
Exactly. Like, I have friends that buy Pro Tools or buy Serato, and I'm like, you do realize this thing can do just about all of this. How much do you use? How much of it do you use? He goes, well, this.
Yeah.
I said, so you just paid all of this money
for nothing. Yeah.
You're not going to use any of
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
It's too complicated.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
That's what they do, and that it wasn't like that before. Before you had to go through the paces. For me, I was lucky. I had Patrick Adams, so things that I couldn't really understand, he was kind enough to teach me. He would come in the studio and always kind and just a really good guy.
Yeah.
And super talented.
Yeah.
Hip hop was nothing to this guy. He was an R&B disco guy.
Okay, sure.
He wrote songs in the 70s that he probably still gets paid for today.
Wow.
I mean, I saw a news article where they called him the king of disco at the time.
Yeah.
He had a group called Musique. He played with Black Ivory, and Black Ivory was one of those classic soul groups.
Sure.
They sang beautiful songs like the Stylistic did. He would write, perform them. When MIDI, which is musical instrument digital interface, is a plug that permitted equipment to talk. When that came into power play, he's the only one that understood it. Oh, wow. And then Yamaha at the time had a keyboard called the DX7. They created one of the world's first rack mounts that had 7 of them or 8 of them. I didn't want to look at that thing. He had that thing like one day, the next day you walk in, all these lights are blinking, and there's 8 different instruments playing. I'm like, damn, Pat.
That's crazy.
It's not that difficult.
That's
I think
crazy.
for you. Eventually I learned it, but he was... And then the Publisan Inferno machine, which is a sampler which changed everything. There may be 3 people, 4. Patrick, myself, Nordy, and Eli. No one else knew how to run it. It was just too complicated. Patrick initially learned it, and he used it on Paid in Full for Rakim.
Okay, sure.
And then I got involved in that in recording a lot of that album. And then from there I learned it, and then I learned to use it in my way, tricks and things of that nature. But it was an incredible machine, and it was like $20,000. It was very expensive. And it was called the Publisan Infernal Machine.
Okay.
And it was the first device that could sample 20 seconds. If you bought the more memory, 40 seconds.
Yeah.
3 minutes. We really only needed 10, 15 seconds to do the things we did.
Sure.
And it would permit you to time stretch, so you could slow something down without affecting the key. So it wouldn't go flat, because that was another mistake a lot of rappers did. They'd loop stuff and then slow it down. I'm like, it's way out of key. And they wouldn't understand.
Yeah.
Oh, but I'm keeping it real.
Yeah.
No, you're keeping it flat.
Yeah, keeping it flat.
It's flat. There's other ways. So, there was a lot of that. But Patrick, I remember when I first met him, I was just giving him so much credit for what he did in R&B and disco. I didn't care about hip hop. I'm like, I kept telling him, you're Patrick Adams. Like, Black Ivory. He goes, yeah. I'm like, oh my God. I said, that is just so amazing.
Yeah.
The strings and things that rappers don't even know what's a string at the time.
Sure.
In time they started using them. And it was Patrick.
Yeah.
Man, Patrick was just incredible. We were like kids under him. Wow. And he was kind enough to teach us, help us learn things in the studio that you could do. Oh man, it's just amazing.
Wow.
And he's still with us, thank God. And he ended up doing music video games, I believe, and other things. And he's just super talented.
Sure.
He's like a one-man band. He can play instruments. He can write. produce, conduct, everything.
Wow.
Yeah, he did Paid in Full, and that's an amazing album.
It's
an amazing album. And that was Patrick.
Wow.
That's Patrick all the way, beginning to end.
Yeah.
He took something and took it to a whole other level.
Sure.
A lot of engineers did that, and probably still do. And unfortunately, you don't get credited right, or at least even maybe a bonus payment or something. I really appreciate what you did for me. Here you go.
Sure.
You don't see that, unfortunately.
I know. Wow.
But Patrick, man, I'll never forget Patrick. Amazing.
Wow.
Just an incredible artist. He was very helpful with Spyder. There was a point where Spyder did a couple of songs where he sang. He helped him go through that, get it right.
Okay, sure.
Very, very good guy. Very good guy.
Wow.
I think the majority of the time he spent at power play.
Wow.
Yep. Me, him, Nordy. I remember when I got there, Julian Hirschfeld was like the chief engineer, but eventually he left. I don't think that genre of music was really where he was going.
Sure.
So he moved on to something probably bigger and better.
Yeah.
And then we stood there.
Yeah.
And we kind of built it. We built it from the ground up, and eventually we got a second building with an SSL in it. Then we replaced a Trident board with an SSL in the original building.
Sure.
And a lot of Rakim stuff and KRS was done in there.
Oh, okay.
And then mixed up the block.
Yeah, and I remember reading in some article or interview with you, maybe I think it was the last one that came out, where you mentioned when BDP first came in, they actually didn't record on the SSL, right?
No, they recorded in the A room on an MCI, and it wasn't a bad console, but it wasn't an SSL. And everything was low budget, so initially a lot of the 2-inch tape that we were told to use was used. So we would have to erase it and use it again.
It was like a cheaper rate that way, huh?
Yeah, because it's used, they charge you less. I think a reel might have been $175. If you got it used, it might have been $90.
Okay, I see.
And as a label owner, you may say, I don't know what's going to come of this. I don't want to spend too much.
Sure.
Criminal Minded, as legendary and great as it sounds, quality-wise, it doesn't touch By All Means Necessary. By All Means Necessary was tracked and mixed in an SSL.
I see, on a new tape, right?
Brand new tape, top-notch gear, and I was involved from the scratch, from the beginning, so nothing got tracked wrong, nothing was too low or too high.
Yeah, you can definitely tell the difference.
There was no bleeding. Everything is top-notch on By All Means Necessary, everything.
Wow,
the quality is just unbelievable. Whereas Criminal Minded, we did a good job, but it was also mixed in the A room. And there were points where there's so many things needed to be punched out. We needed 4 hands. So I would hold these buttons. I would tell Chris, on the count of 3, push them in and pull them out. SSL, I could do it by myself because I just programmed it.
Yeah.
Back up the tape, clip, back up the tape, clip, and then run it, and it all happens.
Wow.
We couldn't do that in the A room.
Wow.
No. The A room didn't have that kind of recording technology or mixing technology. So we had to do it by hand.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. So I know there's a whole lot more we could get into, but I want to be respectful of your time, and most people usually start getting a little tired around 2 hours, the 2 hour mark, which I think we're probably at right now. So I have a final question for you, at least for now.
Sure.
Which is you can keep it to hip hop recordings, or you can keep it to any aspect of your career, or just broader life that you want. But what are some of the things that you're proudest of, either in your career or your life so far?
My career, my music career as an engineer and a producer, I'm mostly proud of the fact that I opened the doors for a lot of future engineer producers, especially Latinos.
Sure.
They may not be aware of it, and that's fine, but prior to Ivan Doc Rodriguez, if you look back, you're going to find a lot of break dancers, some rappers, because Tito and them, here, there, but you're not going to find any Latino in the studio that engineered, mixed, DJ, edited, did the whole thing. Mind you, I didn't even touch on the fact that I even rhymed on some records. Other than the Spyder-D, I mean other than the thing for KRS.
Sure.
I also did a quick project where Spyder-D came in with a Christmas song and told me I have this great Christmas song, and I had a track, and he had the lyrics. He said, but I can't record. I said, why not? He goes, because I'm on profile. I can't do it for another label. And he said, why don't you do it? And I'm saying, I'm not a rapper. He goes, you can do it. So I ended up rapping on a song.
Wow.
It was a joke. It was fun. That was years ago. Now that song is in a compilation of the greatest hip-hop Christmas songs in history. Figure that out. And it was because he told me to do it, and I did it.
Yeah.
And they paid me, and I'm like, wow, I'm not a rapper, but again, not
sure.
that difficult for certain things.
Yeah.
So that I also did. So again, as an artist, I was an artist with The Chosen One. So having done all that, and having been able to have the opportunity to change what hip hop sounds like, that's huge.
Absolutely.
Something I'm very proud of. So that's big for me because I opened doors. I did it with dignity and respect. I didn't cut any corners.
I didn't tear anyone else down.
No, absolutely not. I didn't step on anybody. I didn't defame anyone. I treated everyone with respect, and I enjoyed every moment of it, including the difficult ones, because I grew from them.
Sure.
So that would be in music. That would be that. As far as a DJ, and this is something maybe only my closest friends have ever heard, because I don't speak much about this, but I started as a DJ, and I took that very seriously.
Sure.
And I got to the point where I became so good at blending the music, selecting it, doing all of this with limited technology. I was positive, absolutely positive, that I was the best in the city.
Yeah.
And in that, I thought, if I'm the best in the city, then right now, I'm the best in the whole world.
Yeah, because
there's nobody better than New York.
Sure.
And I went to clubs, and they were great DJs and very popular for whatever they did. But I said, humbly, he can't touch me when it comes to creativity and blending. Because what I do is insane. It's just, my ideas are absolutely insane.
Sure.
And so for that moment of time, I said, nobody's better at this than me.
Yeah.
But I kept it to myself.
Sure.
Except a handful of people that maybe knew what I did and knew what level I did it at.
Yeah.
So as far as the DJ, and I went from being a DJ to becoming a producer and all these other things. So as a DJ, that was something I'm very proud of, to take my profession to a level with such limited resources.
Absolutely.
Was a very big thing for me, because I couldn't afford to do what others could do, but I found a way to do it with less, and I did it better.
Absolutely.
So that was for that. My personal life, I pride myself in being a great father.
Sure.
And a brother and a family person. I got that from my wonderful aunts and my mother. They were very loving to me, so I took in as much as I could of that, and I try to give that out. I try to be polite to everybody and treat people with respect and kindness. So I'm very proud of that part. And coming from Hell's Kitchen, where majority of my friends died.
Sure.
I remember at 15, literally believing I wouldn't pass 20 because of what I saw. So I literally believed either a stray bullet, something crazy is going to happen, but to get out of here by 20, I don't know if I can do it.
Absolutely.
And with God's graces, I was able to get out. I was able to excel. And since I do everything with a humble state of mind, still till today, I didn't realize the impact I had. And every time I returned to Hell's Kitchen to visit my friends and partake in things, they would show so much pride. And like, I saw you in this video, and I saw you in Madison, and I said, yeah, it was one of the jobs I had.
Yeah.
Later on, I said, wow, I've done a lot that I don't even, unless my daughter happens to tell me, Dad, don't you remember this? And you did this, or a record's playing on the radio. She goes, isn't that your song? I don't give it thought.
Yeah, for sure.
So sometimes it's good to think back and go, wow, I made a big difference.
Absolutely.
So that means a lot to me.
Absolutely.
So coming again from Hell's Kitchen, like when I was in Germany, looking up at the moon, I'm saying, wow, I'm here. I could have been in jail.
Absolutely.
Needles sticking out of my arm and things of this nature. And God's blessed me with these opportunities, and I made the best of them. I didn't squander them. I didn't, I said, let me make the best, and whatever I do, even if it doesn't work, I'm going to give it my all.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the main point of everything. Everything I do, I give it my all, and if it doesn't work, I tried my best.
Yeah, just like your productions must rock. Everything.
That's it.
Must rock.
I must, as best I can. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. For
Always.
Sure.
It's always going to be that way. This coming year, in a couple of months, I'll be doing a Puerto Rican Day Parade, and I'll do that to the best of my abilities.
Absolutely.
I'll be prepared. Everything will be great, and it'll be another experience that I would have likely would have never happened if I wouldn't have left 48th Street and met Spyder-D.
Yeah.
True if is, none of that would have happened.
Wow.
None of it would have happened.
Well, Doc, is there anything else that you want to share at the moment?
Gosh, we could go on forever. There's so much, so much.
We could. I mean,
you
barely scraped the surface on.
There's just so many things with music and the sacrifices, in not only music but at the studio and all that. But I'm good.
Well, I really appreciate you taking all of this time, and I mean, these stories that you shared today, like, incredible and invaluable too, for getting the history of, I mean, not only hip hop but just music in general for the last 50 years, getting that history right.
Absolutely. And I think anybody involved in anything, music, acting, whatever it is, do your research. Don't take shortcuts.
Absolutely.
You might make money quickly, but at the end of the day, when you're all by yourself without the hype, you don't feel so good about it. When you give it your all, even if you don't make the money you think you deserve, you know it's you. You know it's your work.
Absolutely.
It's like cooking a great meal and no one knows it's you, and they taste it and it's like, wow, that's wonderful. Did your mother do it? Did your grandmother do it?
Yeah.
You don't need to take the credit. You just know I did my best.
Absolutely.
And anything they do, anybody does, music especially, don't take shortcuts.
For sure. Because you can hear it.
You can hear it, absolutely.
And other people can hear it.
And the problem is when people start applauding and yelling, you lose track and you believe your own funk. No, put the hard work in, and years later, here's a last point, great point. I started in 84 going into 85.
Okay.
My professional career.
Sure.
We're in 2022. My records are still on the radio.
Yeah, they are.
My records are still on the radio.
Yeah.
They still sound outrageous. Think about that. When you go into any project, how is it going to sound 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now? Most of what you hear, you won't be able to compare it because it's not going to play 30 years from now.
Absolutely.
When you go in like that, thinking this might be my last project, this might measure me as a person, as a producer, whatever, that's when you really give it your all. Give it your all. Don't shortcut.
Yeah.
Don't shortcut. Give it your all. Take that extra hour or two. Do what you got to do to make that record get to another level, and you'll notice your records will just keep getting better and better.
Yeah.
You take shortcuts, you're going to be okay for a minute.
Yeah.
Then you're going to disappear.
Absolutely.
And that's not what you want.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Doc. It's
My
been
pleasure.
a real pleasure.
Absolutely.